What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Happy hump day, gang. Welcome to the middle of the week, the middle of June already. Both things kind of surprising, both things kind of flying by. June flying by, 2024 flying by. Already like literally the halfway point of the year already. Absolutely wild. Just flies. Baseball season coming up on the halfway point. Sad news in the baseball world last night. I'm sure you guys probably saw. Willie Mays passed away at age 93. Legendary Willie Mays. If I can get to it quick enough in here. A lot of chatter in the Discord today. Just a couple quick Willie Mays stats. 2-time MVP, a ring, a 24-time All-Star, 12-time Gold Glove winner, a batting title, a Rookie of the Year award, 301, 384, 557 for his career, 12.2% strikeout rate with an 11.7% walk rate for his career, 3,005 games played with 2 games missed to go serve his country, 660 home runs, 3,000 plus hits, forgot to record the hit total, 2,068 runs, 1,909 ribbies, 338 stolen bases, a 255 career ISO, a 154 career WRC+, Hall of Famer, third all-time by traditional WAR, behind just Babe Ruth and his godson, Barry Bonds, which is also insane. 12th all-time ribbies, 7th all-time in runs. Now he's the 6th all-time in home runs. He was number 3 forever, but he's been passed by a few of the more recent guys. But just an absolute all-timer. And just one of the great baseball people. I also posted, if you're in the Discord, I put the famous The Catch. If you've never seen it, it's worth looking at. It was from a tweet from, it's a roughly 15-second clip of him making one of the most incredible catches in baseball history. So, rip number 24, but baseball moves on. I'm sure there'll be some really good tributes to him over the next couple of days. They had a whole thing planned for him this coming weekend down at the. He wasn't going to be there because he was ailing, but they were going to do. They're still doing a whole tribute to him at the. I forget the name of the ballpark down in Alabama where he first came up with the Negro League team that was down there that I'm struggling to remember the name of. The Birmingham Barons, I think it was. Am I right about that? What the hell was the name of that team? I know it's BBB is the abbreviation. Anyway, they're doing a big tribute thing to him down there, and they're playing a series there this coming weekend. So unfortunately, he's not going to see it, but I'm sure there's going to be just crazy tributes to him and a lot of stories going around over the next couple of years. And got emotional on the broadcasts last night. It was crazy to listen to. Just all kinds of people chiming in left, right, and center. Telling Willie Mays stories and everything, and just breaking the news on the Giants broadcast. There were clips going around of that, and it was pretty amazing just listening to their inability to even get the words out. He meant that much to people. It was the Birmingham Black Barons, BBB. That was the team he broke in with in 1948, and then it was mostly with the Giants, and then 2 years at the end with the Mets as an old man back in New York. New York Giants 1951 and 52, and then San Francisco Giants. They split it up oddly. It's 51 and 52, and then he went to war, came back in 54 through 72 between the New York and San Francisco Giants. Anyway, moving on. Now that a few people are here. Interesting DFS slate to talk about. 8 Gamer just did an update on the run board, and just kind of an interesting place to start. Basically every game, all the games highlighted in yellow came down by a half a run in the last 2-3 hours. So just kind of an interesting looking slate. There's a pretty good pitching board. If we look over here, we've got a lot of top end options up here. We've got some potentially successful guys from the mid-range right here. We've got a returning ace probably on a bit of a pitch count here who might hit the 5th inning, know that he's on a pitch count, and plunk somebody and get tossed out of the game as well, or he might do that in the 1st inning. We'll see how the Yankees respond to yesterday. Potentially believable just for a shorter start, as he's been doing a lot. Sean Manaea, Brian Bayo down here. This is an interesting one, depending on where the pitch count is. Very, very talented kid. So it's a pretty deep pitching board. So I get why we've got some some low run totals, but I'm surprised to see them come down another half a run for basically all of these games. I found that interesting when I noticed it before. So we'll see where it lands. If it's updated, if they're all back up by another half run. I usually don't move the board around that much for minor run movement. But since they all moved, I figured it was worth moving them. And if they go back up, again, I'll probably move them. Like especially the Yanks and the Orioles. I know Garrett Cole's starting for the Yanks. Kate Povich is on the mound for the Orioles. Maybe the Yanks have Aaron Judge. Maybe they don't. We'll see what happens there. Yes, he's worth a half a run. But it should still probably be 8. That should probably be the difference more between 8.5 and 8 rather than 8 and 7.5. So that's an interesting one to watch. I could definitely believe this one goes higher. But we'll see what happens there. Starting at that Orioles and Yankees game, like I said, Garrett Cole returning, the Cy Young pitcher, returning to the mound finally for the Yankees. All indications are we're looking at like an 80 pitch count. He hit high 60s in his final outing. He made 3 starts at in the minors in rehab. Certainly has upside over a 80 pitch count start in the right spot, but he's kind of high priced for that type of an outing on both sites, and he's going up against a obviously really good Orioles lineup in Yankee Stadium. I don't love the Cole option today for DFS. You need a lot of other angles to kind of go bust. We'll take a look at it. Povich on the hill for the Orioles, a high-end prospect, only made a few starts in the show so far, but he's been pretty high strikeout in the minors, so he's not completely uninteresting against the Yankees, but I do find it surprising that they're relegated to just a 4.13 implied total in such a low line in that game. Might be an overreaction to the potential absence of Judge. And Anthony Rizzo, of course. Did anybody see that Rice kid, Ben Rice from the Yankees? Dude looks like he's about 14 years old out there. It's pretty funny because he's like 6'1", but compared to some of the other Yankees, it's like, yeah, he looks a little tiny. But he's just this enthusiastic kid. He looks like a puppy. He got his first hit, and he's just, hopping around. After the game, they pushed him out to the front of the high fives line, and he just had a huge grin on his face. It was a nice moment for the kid in his first game. But looks like he might be a decent option at first base going forward as a cheap bat for DFS, especially when they're at home in Yankee Stadium. I don't think he'll be in the lineup today. I oriented it with, I put Judge in, and we'll talk about this when we get there, and I've got DJ at first base today. I think that's how they go against the lefty rather than rolling the kid out against the lefty, but we'll see what happens. Red Sox at the Blue Jays. Brian Bayo going for the Sox, and the Jays responding with Kevin Gausman, who's been a bit of a roller coaster in spots. He's had some really rough ones, and he's had some really excellent ones. So we never really know what we're going to get with Kevin Gausman, just like Forrest Gump and his box of chocolates. But I do think he's always playable. We'll see where he lands on the board. Bayo, same thing coming the other way against the low strikeout Blue Jays. 3.54 implied total for the Red Sox. 4.04 implied total on the Blue Jays side. Another one. Low-end run totals. The Rays and the Twins. Taj Bradley and Andrew... excuse me? Did I skip the pitcher in this game? It is Taj Bradley going for... Who the hell is pitching for... Minnesota. Joe Ryan. I skipped over Joe Ryan. I was looking. I have these listed in my game log, and my game log file, and I just forgot to include Joe Ryan. So I went from Taj Bradley to Andrew Heaney. I was like, wait a minute, we're missing a Twins pitcher. So it's Taj Bradley going for the Rays, and then Joe Ryan going for the Twins against the Rays. Pretty high end spot for Ryan. We've all probably hit some walls along the way with Joe Ryan. Taj Bradley, but I do think he's very high end, and I think this is a believable enough spot for him against the scuffling Rays team. And then Taj Bradley has very high end starts in him, like we saw the last time out, but we've also seen him get nailed for home run upside. So the Twins are showing some interesting power on their side, but he's also got some excellent stuff and some high end strikeout ability. 4.23 implied total for Minnesota, 3.35 implied total on the Rays side. And now it's Andrew Heaney. He's facing the Mets, and then you've got Sean Manaea going for the Mets against the Rangers. Couple of lefties in that one. Should be interesting. I think it's kind of like last night where I prefer the bats a little bit more than I prefer the pitching. I do think Sean Manaea is good, but for DFS purposes, he typically only goes 5 and then he checks out. He very rarely gives you the 6th inning. That could work better on DraftKings than it does on FanDuel, certainly. But he's a limited option for DFS. He caps his strikeout upside in a lot of spots. He's also in a tough matchup against the Rangers. And then Heaney has bounced back and forth between being elite some years, a target for bats other years, and then kind of in the middle, like in years like this year. He hasn't really gotten blown up this year. The earned run high is 6. That came in his second start back in early April. After that, he's only given up a earned run high of 4, but he's given up 3 a number of times. He's gettable for home run power. So it's an interesting spot. It is the second highest, tied for the second highest total on the board as well. 4.06 going to the Mets and 4.02 on the other side going to the Rangers. Astros at the White Sox. Today we are not looking at the Astros against White Sox pitching because Garrett Crochet is on the mound for them. That's got the Astros checked down to 3.66 implied runs on their side, and then 3.42 for the pathetic White Sox going back the other way against Hunter Brown, another very good pitcher who has really found his form over his last 5-6 starts. So Brown looks really good against the White Sox. Crochet, I think, is easily playable against the Astros with strikeout upside, even against that excellent lineup. And we'll see what version of that lineup we get today. It was greatly diminished overall yesterday. Became kind of a value angle like we talked about on the show yesterday and was clicked together in a lot of interesting ways. We were talking about it after the show in the chat, just trying to configure a DraftKings lineup, seeing what top-end pitching combinations we could get to. And I don't imagine that one won because Kevin didn't come back and say that he won with it, but it's just an interesting exercise saying, all right, what if we switch this to that? All right, now if we go back to that other one but switch this to this, does it buy us this in this spot? We're looking at a few different changes between the two stacks that he had. I think it was the Astros and the Brewers, and then we were trying to get to just high end pitching, and all right, can we go value and then pile higher end pitching on top of it? And we got to an interesting lineup, I thought, but again, obviously didn't succeed. Dodgers against the Rockies, 10.5 run total at Coors Field. Obviously the high point of the day. Bobby Miller on the mound for the Dodgers in his return to the show. He's made a couple of starts in AAA recently. Pitched 4 and change innings. It was 4 2/3, so he pitched into a 5th inning in the last one. 4 innings the start before that. I didn't get the pitch counts, but he's kind of been on a managed count early in his career anyway at the major league level, and we're throwing him into Coors Field. He's got an okay projection. He's got a really good chance of racking up a handful of strikeouts, but he also was giving up a bunch of runs. He was getting hit a little bit in the rehab starts. As I've said many times, I don't really care about that, but that also does, to at least a degree, lean more toward like veteran guys who were making rehab starts rather than a young pitcher like this, just going back to a level he's been at before, but just that was very recently. Doesn't have a ton of proven experience in the show to necessarily fall back on, experience coming back from injury and so on. So I'd like to have seen a little bit higher end performance from him in these minor league starts, as far as management of runs, management of hits, and just shutting down minor league hitters before coming back for a Coors Field start. So I'm a little bit skeptical about the depth. I'm a little bit worried that he gets hit a little bit here, just as he's refining his form. He is an excellent pitcher. I have no qualms about the talent whatsoever. Super high-end kid. But probably not the best spot to be bringing him back. Like, if you're the Dodgers, just why would you make this decision? Give him one more start one more rehab start. You're not worried about your record. Give him one more rehab start in the minors. Don't bring him back for a Coors Field. I know the Rockies are bad, but why throw him into Coors Field? It's just weird. And I do, as I featured yesterday, and then they went out and scored a bunch of runs and then lost the game in the 9th inning and blew up the slate because the Dodgers went off. I do think that Rockies lineup is a little bit more interesting now. So 4.45 implied total for them, and then a monster 6.18 to lead the slate again for the Dodgers, top-ranked team on the board. Brewers checking in number 2 overall on the board, or maybe it was number 3 on the stack rankings, but by implied total, number 2 overall, and drawing some pretty significant projections. 4.61 implied total for them against Tyler Anderson, and then Freddie Peralta, another excellent pitcher on the hill for the Brewers, facing the low-end Angels. Plenty of strikeout upside for Freddie. 3.49 implied total for Los Angeles. Freddie looks like a pretty strong option. And then the final game, just a 7-run total there, 3.07, bottom of the board for the A's. They're facing Cole Ragans, who's pitching for the Royals. He's got the Royals pressed up as pretty good favorites, but they're only at a 4.01 implied total against Luis Medina, which I think is kind of interesting given that Medina's given up 10 earned runs in his last 2 appearances. It's, he's okay looking at times as like a value angle into a DFS slate. We've mentioned him a few times for that. But that feels like a really low total for a pretty decent Kansas City team against that pitcher. So I guess we got to look into that. Is there a significant wind blowing in that I don't know about? I didn't explore why that total is actually that low on the KC side. No, in fact, the wind is blowing out in Oakland, directly to dead center at 9 miles an hour, and it's 60 degrees. Seems like a nice night for a ball game in Oakland. Realistically, this should be higher. Again, Medina's not an untalented guy, but I don't really see the justification for checking the Royals to 4.01 implied runs. Again, that one was at 7.5, so before that it was 4.30. I feel like I'd be saying the same thing. I feel like we should be more in that kind of territory. Like, either the Royals should be bigger favorites at 7.5 with Ragans on the mound. It's not wholly unbelievable. They could be more like that, maybe, and get there that way. It just depends on where it extracts the math from. But that's a low total. In 109 2/3 last year, 23 games, 17 starts, Medina had a 5.42 ERA and a 4.77 xFIP with a 1.4% strikeout rate. I guess I could have looked at that later, but I was just curious. I had to look it up. That seems low. That could be a potentially interesting spot for KC. He's down here if you were curious about where he ranks out. So really interesting board runs-wise. Could be in for a lot of low-scoring games again tonight. It could be a really interesting spot. And I know eventually this one did end up going wild. By the way, I put it in the Discord. It was another tweet that I saw. Last night was the 6th time this year that the Colorado Rockies have given up 5 or more runs in the 9th inning or later. No team in baseball had ever done that more than 4 times in a single season in the history of baseball. Ever. More than 4. They've done it 6 already, and we're only halfway through. We're not even halfway through the season. That is bonkers. Cole Ragans top of the board against the Athletics in that game we were just talking about. Believable that he keeps them completely in check. He's excellent. 40.95 total on the FanDuel board, 21 and change on DraftKings. 10,600 is perfectly fine, believable on the DK slate. 98 feels a little bit cheap on the FanDuel slate for 10.6. 98 feels a little cheap on the DK side of the board for him. You can easily put him above 10, but it's a very deep slate. And all the high-priced pitchers, save Garrett Cole, really, and only because he's on a pitch count, everybody's basically in a nice little pocket here, and then there's a good mid-range pocket here, lower end here. So it's one of those slates that stacks up like pretty appropriately based on where everybody's priced. Garrett Crochet is excellent. I have no qualms about taking him against this Houston team, even though they're low strikeout. He has proven the ability to just go out there and get low strikeout hitters anyway. 10.5 on FanDuel, worth paying for. 9.2 on DraftKings. The only thing you lose with going back in the White Sox is you do lose a little bit of equity for the win upside. A lot of quality start bonuses in his path. Certainly some strikeout potential. He could get dinged for runs. That Astros lineup is good. They will put the ball in play against him, so maybe they don't give him as good a strikeout opportunity. but he is one of the best options on the board. Maybe it does diminish his popularity when you can get Ragans for similar pricing against a much weaker Oakland team, when you get Joe Ryan for similar pricing against a much weaker Rays team. Freddie Peralta certainly for way cheaper pricing against the Angels is interesting. So maybe Crochet gets a little bit fallen by the wayside when it comes to public ownership. You can pick him up at a little bit of a popularity discount. He's still excellent. Ryan against Tampa Bay, 10-3, 9,500. Perfectly playable. Peralta, 95, 96. DraftKings, I think, appropriately this time around. I think DK got it right with Freddie. I don't really see the need to have him that much cheaper. I know we've hit a few bumps in the road. Hasn't been his best season for earned runs, but still has plenty of strikeout stuff. Some great games in his game log. A lot of appearances of 5+ for sure, into the 6th, completing the 6th. Just 1 in the 7th this year so far. But Freddie remains really good. So if you need a little savings on FanDuel, they built it in for you. Nice little discount on Freddie against the Angels. No such discount on DraftKings, but not mispriced. So this is perfectly fine. Bradley, again, does have strikeout upside. I think this is one is maybe playing with a little bit of fire, though, with how good that Twins offense has been, with the power that they have in that lineup, the power that they're showing in the home run model, and just his run-ins with home runs against are a little bit concerning there. But he's got excellent stuff. He's got excellent strikeout upside, even against that Twins team. So I think that one's a both sideser. We'll take a look at it. Kevin Gausman, probably another both sideser here, 8,000, 8,300. I don't think you can avoid Gausman for those prices. 2 starts back, it was against the A's, but he pitched a 5-hit shutout, struck out 10, walked 1. That feels like an old school Kevin Gausman start. Last time out was against Cleveland. He went 5 1/3. He gave up 3 earned runs on 8 hits. Not ideal. One of them was a homer. But, I mean, that's not a meltdown. It's an average start over against a very good team. And he struck out 6 against the Guardians. That's a pretty decent start. If he had gotten 2 more hitters, that would have been a quality start, but obviously didn't. But it's still an okay start, and you're not paying a premium for it. Red Sox probably a little bit more strikeouts in their lineup than the Guardians. Start before that, he got hit around a little bit by the Orioles over 6 1/3. He still did go 6 1/3 in that game, but he only struck out 3. He gave up 3 home runs, 6 earned runs on 6 hits. That was a problematic start. There's a lot of 6-inning games in here. Several high strikeout totals in there. He's definitely not been peak Kevin Gausman, but it's not like he's priced like it. So that's just a really interesting start to the value range. This is a ridiculous value. Neither site has Hunter Brown, Kevin Brown. Neither site should have Kevin Brown on it whatsoever tonight. If they do, don't play him. You should be able to play Kevin Brown tonight and get credit back to spend at other positions, like -5,000, Kevin Brown, and then you could go out and buy Aaron Judge and Juan Soto together. Hunter Brown, the guy who's actually pitching, he's been terrific over, I want to say 5 starts in a row, and he's a very high-end kid. This is not an out-of-nowhere performance and out-of-nowhere flash in the pan. This is just him rounding into form, being the pitcher he's expected to be. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. He's booked 5 quality starts in a row. In his last 4, he struck out 9 twice and 7 twice. Once against Seattle, Minnesota, the Angels, and Detroit. Not the best of opponents outside of Minnesota. But it's just him finding his form and pitching well. And he's facing the worst team in baseball. Why the hell is he only 7,800 on FanDuel? 7,000 on DraftKings is just dumb. Free square. He should be easily the most highly owned pitcher today. You can debate your way between these guys, and they'll probably chop up ownership a little bit each. But everybody in the universe should be on that play. What is his projected ownership? Are you kidding? All right. Let's see what it is on DraftKings. You guys can give me above belows from your site of choice. Don't give me the actual numbers when I mention these. Wow. So our pals over at RG have him the third most highly owned pitcher on DraftKings. I think his number should exceed by a significant margin what it currently is at, which is just a little bit under a quarter of all projected lineups, or you know what I mean. And then on FanDuel, it's like half that. He's easily the best pitching option on the FanDuel slate, if that's correct ownership. I don't think it can be. He should absolutely be 20+% owned on FanDuel. And this place has him way below that. It's a deep slate, so there are a lot of options which could be impacting it, I'm sure. But I think they're both wrong. I think they're both a little bit high on Ragans. I think he more splits ownership the other way. Brown for 200 less than Gaussman on FanDuel. That's where they're wrong. I'm pretty sure that this ownership on Kevin Gaussman is going to come up incorrect against that ownership on Hunter Brown. There's no way that people are going to pay 200 more frequently to get to Kevin Gaussman against the Red Sox than they are for 200 less to get to Hunter Brown against the White Sox. That doesn't make any sense. Did they do that on DK as well? Not to argue with our guys over at RG. They do good work over there. Yeah, they've got it different on DK, where Gaussman's 300 more than Bradley. They've got him a fairly significant margin below, like 8 percentage points below where they've got Brown in that one. No, again, it's a $1,300 gap. That's what it is. It's 1,300 more there, less there. All right, so that makes sense that it would be that big of a gap with Brown on top. I think on FanDuel specifically, though, they've got it upside down. Either that or the public does. I mean, if this is right, advantage those of us who are talking about it, because Hunter Brown looks like a terrific option if he's going to be that low owned on FanDuel at that price. Anyway, not to waste the whole show on that, or not that it was a waste, not to spend the whole show on that. Just worried about the pitch count there again. I think we're looking at like 80. So, and it's not a great matchup, obviously. I don't care about that at all with Garrett Cole. And Garrett Cole could easily go out there and strike out 7, complete 5 innings on 80 pitches against basically anybody. But you end up questioning for the money what the ceiling looks like against the ceilings of all the options above. So I think it just gets a little boxed out by a projected pitch count. I don't think he's entirely unplayable here. 99 on FanDuel is probably pushing it for playability, given that pitch count restriction. And that's not announced, but he didn't crack 70 in his rehab, so I can't imagine him going out there and throwing 100 pitches tonight. Right there, again, just against all these options above and a couple of these ones, with potential below for lower prices, it's a little awkward. It's a little rough. Manaea, like I said, same thing with Heaney. They both do have believable, playable potential as just cheap dart throws, knowingly against bad teams. I think it was, they were arguing with one another, so it was either Mamba or XX Cubs fan in the Discord. One of the two of you called out Pete Alonso as a home run pick, and I like that pick today against Andrew Heaney because Andrew Heaney is always a player that I target. But by the same token, there's several of the Rangers who have pretty decent home run totals. Adolis Garcia, I think, was the player I picked from that team today against Manaea. But the usual suspects are looking pretty good on both sides. So I think it's, again, like yesterday, I kind of like that spot for offense a little bit more on both sides than I like the pitchers. And again, with on FanDuel, Manaea, I always get concerned about the short outings. Brian Bayo could certainly succeed. It just depends on what he does strikeout-wise against a fairly low strikeout Toronto team. 7,600, 7,500, perfectly capable of paying those prices off. Bobby Miller, I'm also, again, as I said before, a little concerned about the pitch count there, and then just a little concerned about current form. Just, young kid returning to the major leagues after an injury, and, wasn't pitching that well in AAA. So it's a little shaky bringing him back in this spot when he wasn't already pitching well. If he was blazing a trail through AAA, I'd be like, all right, let's give him a shot here. But I think for our purposes, 8,200, if he was in the sixes on DraftKings, I'd be a little bit more inclined. But when he's similarly priced to a little bit more realistic value guys, when he's 600 more than Hunter Brown against the White Sox, just feels like a why would you kind of spot. But he's more than got the talent to beat the Rockies, 6 times over, rack up a handful of strikeouts in a weak pitch count. So it's not the worst idea in the world, but it's probably less than a good idea. Tyler Anderson against the Brewers, pretty firm no there. The Brewers are showing a ton of offensive upside. K. Bovich, maybe playable with a little bit of strikeout potential. Probably hangs on whether Judge is in that lineup or not for the Yankees. We'll see if we got it. Luis Medina against the Royals, I feel like is a no, but maybe at 5,500, again, he does oddly pop sometimes as like a potential value option just because he's always priced in the garbage. And then Ryan Feltner's a pretty firm no against the Dodgers. Yep, Travis nailed it. DK has Hunter Brown too cheap. True. There's Colin. Forgot to update, but I didn't win. Came pretty close with a min cash with Houck under one. That's right, we got to Houck in that lineup, and he didn't have a great start, yeah. Paez upgrade over Marsh would have been a lot better. Yeah. Sometimes it's too many changes, Monty saying, I'm seeing Brown listed as the 4th and 5th highest owned on 2 other sites. It feels awfully low to me. I honestly think he should be one of the top-end pitchers. Like, you could pick your favorite of the aces and say, like, and I think it does make sense for it to be Raggins. And just say, like, all right, Cole Raggins, 20%. Thinking in, FanDuel single pitcher terms. 20, high 20s on DraftKings. I think he's justifiably number 2 as far as where the public ownership should be. So if other places are putting him that low, fire away. I think that is a great looking value today, and it gets better if he's going to be that low owned. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to build one lineup tonight, and he's going to be my pitcher. Unless lightning strikes him as he goes to the mound, and that does remind me, is there weather? There's weather in the area, but Roth had it yellow-green. Says it'll likely hold north of the ballpark. Should be fine. I'm willing to ride with that. He's also got Colorado yellow-green. Thanks as always to Kevin Roth. Follow Kevin Roth on Twitter, and his free reports are available at RotoGrinders on just the free output. We do not give away his paid info here, but we always do defer to him for the weather. Anyway, the first one up is a really interesting one with some moving parts around Mr. Aaron Judge, who fortunately was not actually injured by the 94-mile-an-hour fastball that would have crippled another man. But he won't play today. Just dropped a minute ago. I don't think we have the lineup yet, but we got the note that he won't play. So that's a pain in the ass. All right, so that's going to diminish the Yankees, and it's going to make their lineup weird. Because you don't typically want to roll Trent Grisham out there against a lefty. I guess Verdugo could play center. And then either Ozzie or it's probably Jahmai Jones who goes in. One of the two plays left and the other one plays third with DJ at first. Like I said, I don't think Ben Rice plays first today against the lefty, but maybe he does. Maybe that's what they do. And they just go Ozzie in left, Verdugo in center, Soto in right. Stanton stays at DH because God knows we don't want Stanton playing the outfield. And then Rice at first and DJ at third. That's probably the best option. Just give you call Rice up for a reason. Like give him a chance, regardless of the lefty on the hill. And it's a lefty who's just new to the majors himself, so it's not like it's throwing him up against Cole Ragans, let's say. That is an interesting wrinkle though. I'm gonna do it that way, I think. Let's redo it real quick. So Volpe, Soto. Maybe move something like that. What did Labs have? Labs had Glaber hitting high up. They had him 3. That probably makes more sense than a stagger there. But then you still have the Verdugo Stanton part. You probably leave Soto. Whoops. Now I'm just playing with this. Volpe, Soto, move Glaber up. Verdugo Stanton. I would leave it like that then. DJ. And then the hell did I say it would be? Oh, Ben Rice. Thank you. Right, something like that. Maybe they swap these two, actually. Just to keep the lefty-righty in place. This probably isn't what they end up doing. They probably end up going with that Jahmai Jones version that Labs has up. But it would be more interesting, I think, if they did it this way. Do we have minor league splits on Rice? Sorry to take this up, but this is important with this Yankees lineup. Obviously, it's a big piece. Let's roll with this version. We'll see what happens. Why did we not get stats on him? Did I get his name wrong? Ben Rice. He's in the board. Why is he not coming up here? I updated this today. Did they not? Bear with me. Why the hell would he not be? Is there something weird? Is it Benjamin? That's probably what it is. Yep, it's Benjamin. That's annoying. We'll fix that later. You got a hit yesterday. I don't want to waste any more time on Ben Rice at this point. Young kid, they had a bunch of homers in the minors. If he's playing tonight, even against the lefty, maybe it's interesting for the Yankees lineup. He is actually on the slate today, which is an improvement. Actually has catcher eligibility on DK as well, which is kind of interesting. 2,800 over there, 2,400 at first base on the FanDuel slate. But starting with Cade Povich, 5,800, 6,800, it would only be like a cheapo faith-based play. He did go 6 in his most recent start, shut out the Braves over those 6 innings, gave up 5 hits and struck out 6. If you get that kind of performance for your money here, that's not that bad. Even with no Judge, that is difficult to pull off against this Yankees lineup in Yankee Stadium. So it's more of a I'll believe it when I see it kind of a spot for me. But he is a high-end prospect, like I said. Last year, over 28 starts across AA and AAA, he had what amounts to let's call it was 33.4% in AA and 26.9% in AAA. In those starts, it was 18 starts in AA and 10 starts in AAA. So call that 29.5%, somewhere around there, averaging them together. This year so far in AAA, he had a 32.5% strikeout rate over 56 and 2/3 in 11 starts. So the kid is good. The kid is definitely capable of finding some strikeouts against guys like Osage and Carlos Stanton and Gleyber Torres and DJ LeMahieu certainly is gettable this year. Volpe's always gettable. So there's some potential for him. It's just, do you really want to tangle with the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, even with no Judge, on such a deep pitching slate? Doesn't feel right. Cole, on the other side, again, we're just looking at an innings limitation. In his most recent start, he went 4 1/3 in the minors. He struck out 10 in that outing. That's the thing. He's pitching against AAA hitters, obviously, and that was on, I think, 68 pitches. So to strike out 10 hitters with that is obviously, you're pretty ridiculous, and you're probably ready to come back and do your thing. But I still think 80, maybe 85. If it's 85, he's got the chance to go, and he's really on form. He's got the chance to get through 5+, but I think we're looking more realistically 5 innings, 80 pitches. No matter what happens, we're punching you out. And like I said at the top of the show, there is that lingering possibility that Cole knows he's on an 80 pitch count. He's thrown 77 coming into the top of the 5th inning. And let's say, Gunnar, Adley, Mountcastle, one of those guys is coming to the plate. He might buzz him or plunk him. And he might get himself tossed at that point. So, we'll see what happens. But I do think he's just mispriced for what the probability is. He's not mispriced for the possibility, which is why, at least on DraftKings, which is why I think he's probably a little bit playable over there. Because the ceiling is elite, even against these Orioles. 20.9% strikeout as a group for them, 23.1% for the same hitters last year. They're obviously good, but even they pale in comparison to the talent of Garrett Cole, like all teams do. So he's one of those pitchers. So next time probably we'll be there, fully stretched out Garrett Cole. We'll look forward to that opportunity, but today I think I'll leave him on the shelf. Orioles bats against don't look all that appealing. There is some power showing. Cole always prone to the solo home run, 2 solo home runs even. But with so few guys on base against, by and large, they do tend to just be solo home runs that are not great for DFS purposes outside of maybe the odd one-off here or there. And you can see Gunnar at the top of the board. That's a monster home run projection against anybody, let alone against Garrett Cole. 14.26. If you're going to a one-off for anybody, Gunnar's probably your choice, but that's the most expensive possible one-off, I think, on the entire slate at the shortstop position. Certainly, and one of the most expensive on the entire slate overall. Adley's very playable on any given slate, 5,600. Again, it's a very expensive one-off at catcher, and you're drawing against Garrett Cole for at least 5 innings. So, problematic option as a one-off. 3,500 on FanDuel. Adley's got 14 home runs. Gunner's got 22. Ryan Mountcastle's hit 11. Certainly has the power to drive one out in Yankee Stadium. 4,400 on the DraftKings slate, 3,000 on FanDuel. Showing an 8.45 in the home run model. He's got plenty of premium contact upside. I always like Mountcastle. It's just really not a day where I'm going to be looking to stack Orioles, even though they do look okay on the power side. I've got faith in the power that's showing. And like I said, it probably, if it does happen, it probably turns into a solo shot. But I've also got a lot of faith against Garrett Cole in that on the Vegas side of things, a 3.45 implied total. So that speaks to me of like individual upside possibly, but you got to bullseye it against one of the best pitchers in baseball versus the possibility of the stack really going off. O'Hearn, similar with all these guys. He's very talented. He's also inexpensive at 4,000, 2,800 for a guy slashing 282, 341, 468. 186 ISO, creating runs 31% better than average. He's cooled from the ridiculous tear that he was on that started like last year, but he's still been very, very good from the left side and has that lefty fly ball in Yankee Stadium ability. 8.07. If you're looking for just like a low-owned one-off here at a good price, that's actually your guy. Colton Cowser fills that role as well, but I probably would favor O'Hearn with the plus batting spot in the lineup compared to Cowser 2 spots later. And just on like a experience basis, a strikeout basis, there's a lot of reasons to probably lean Ryan O'Hearn in that combo. But either one of those guys could be the lefty that pops one out against Cole. But again, you're just looking at a low-end home run. But O'Hearn for a fair price is not, if you're determined to target Garrett Cole here, is not the worst pick. Santander, 4,500, 2,900, also has a ton of power, 18 home runs, 271 ISO, 129 WRC+. If you're stacking Orioles, you're certainly not skipping him. Kowser's got a ton of power, 16.4%, barrels 50.7% hard hits, also strikes out at a 30% clip. He's got 9 home runs on the year, 118 WRC+, very good young outfielder, but not a great spot. Cedric Mullins, Ramon Urias, Jorge Mateo, all up and down kind of players. Mullins contributing counting stats, 6 homers, 13 steals. Mateo kind of along the same track right now, 4 homers, 12 steals. Limited triple slash for all 3 of those guys, limited output. Urias does have a little bit of power in his bat as well. He's hit 3 home runs this year, just a 137 ISO, but he's been good for infrequent power in the past, and he's cheap in the infield. Third base on DraftKings, not ideal. Second base on FanDuel works for me a little bit better. Assuming that the Yankees lineup looks something like this. Oh, they finally revealed why Jason Dominguez went back on the IL. Moderately strained oblique, no timeline for return. Kid's looking a little injury prone right now. So we know Dominguez and Judge won't be playing for the Yankees tonight, but the guys who probably will, Anthony Volpe off the top, 4,700, 3,000, 6 home runs, 15 stolen bases, a 108 WRC+. Finds ways to get involved a lot, not hitting the ball quite as hard as he was last year, but putting it in play at a pretty good clip, hitting for a better average, getting on base at a better clip. So I care a little bit less about the barrels and the hard hits, especially with the promotion to the top of the batting order. Just settle in for good on base and average and do your thing there. He's striking out a lot less. So he's become a more interesting, more complete hitter, even with a bit of a decline in certain areas. 6,200, 4,400 for Juan Soto on his own now. No, you don't have to pay for the pairing with him and Judge, and you still get him surrounded by productive hitters. So it is still a good-looking spot. Soto, no worries about lefty-lefty, all the power in the world. 18 home runs on the board this year, a 190 WRC+. He's obviously amazing. If you get Gleyber hitting third, that makes Gleyber more interesting than he is when he's hitting seventh, even though he's kind of scuffled his way through this year, 221, 301, 332. Tons of ability. It's not a question of that. We just saw him come off a really good season last year, and it's just been in a decline for most of this season, but has shown, again, in spurts, the old Gleyber in there. So I don't write him off completely. The barrels are down, the hard hits are down, the strikeouts are up, the walks are slightly down. The average is way down, the on base is way down, the power output is down, but some of that has started to gradually course correct. He's like a gigantic ship, like turning, trying to avoid the iceberg. Hopefully Gleyber doesn't hit the iceberg. He's very cheap at second base if he's hitting third in the Yankees lineup against the lefty today. Alex Verdugo for 43, 3,000. I got to admit, when Verdugo came to the team, I was like, all right, he's a serviceable, he's a good fielder, serviceable hitter. I don't love him. Don't know that I would want to be friends with the guy if he was, came to my poker game or something like that. Seemed like a, bit of a abrasive personality type. And sometimes you want that guy on your team. And after last night with him yelling out there at the pitcher, he's gonna you up. After I'm done with you, I'm gonna fuck that other guy up. It's pretty funny. And hey, that's how you win fans over. So starting to love Verdugo a little bit. He's also having a good little season. 9 home runs, creating runs 11% better than average. 261, 315, 425. Playing a heck of a left field. Doesn't really strike out, puts a lot of balls in play. Interesting option as a cheap cleanup hitter in the Yankees lineup. Another lefty in Yankee Stadium. Lefty, less than ideal there, but we'll see where he's hitting in the lineup. Certainly playable. Stanton, 13.59 in the home run model, 17 on the board for this season, 243 ISO for him. Let us down as the home run pick yesterday, but could go right back to the well with him today. No issues with it whatsoever. Monster righty bat against what amounts to a minor league lefty. No offense to Kate Povich. I mean, he's a major league lefty now, but 2 starts into his career. Ben Rice, if he's in there, again, playable. Cheap first base option. Love that he's a catcher eligible option on the DraftKings slate, particularly because, I mean, you probably won't get him, but particularly because you definitely won't get Austin Wells at catcher. You'll have Jose Trevino today. So it just gives you an interesting other option that's a little bit cheaper, if that's the way they configure the lineup, but don't know that for sure. DJ, 3,500, 2,400. I see no way that DJ's not in the lineup today with what they've got to work with. He just hasn't been really good over 61 plate appearances. Limited on base. Sub Mendoza, 45 WRC plus. Literally a 0 ISO so far. Hasn't been great. Drawing some walks, keeping him alive and getting him involved a little bit. But obviously that's at 55% worse than average for run creation. Ozzy Cabrera, not all that much better at 79 WRC plus. 5 homers, 2 steals. Pretty ineffective hitter, but he's probably going to be in the lineup today. And then Trevino, between the Yankees catchers, he's got the way better numbers. He's actually having a pretty decent season. He's up to 8 home runs, which is shocking output over 146 plate appearances for Jose Trevino. And 271, 317, 451, creating runs 19% better than average. I should probably stop saying that Wells is the better hitter in this at the catcher position. This is a surprising season from Trevino. Hit 4 home runs in 168 plate appearances last year, 11 in 353 the year before. So potentially a sneaky good catcher option, I guess, at the bottom of the Yankees lineup. I don't think that output continues at that level from Trevino all year, but who knows. So, really, neither pitcher, I don't think. Yankees bats above Orioles bats. So, Gausman, as mentioned, bit of a roller coaster this year. Potentially elite upside on any given slate. Just got the Red Sox lineup in. But I get you if your thing is I've hit the wall too many times with Kevin Gausman, owning him for a cheap price and getting a mediocre to bad start. It does happen. But you also get the very high-end ones. Again, 2 starts ago against the A's, complete game, 5-hit shutout, 10 strikeouts. Yeah, that's the A's. He also struck out 10 Tigers earlier this year, handful of 6 strikeout games, an 8 strikeout game. Yeah, he's got 3 games in his ledger this year where he gave up 6 earned runs. He's got multiple games where he's given up multiple home runs, gave up 3 home runs to the Orioles. Comparable team maybe to the Red Sox. Nah. Orioles are better, but I mean, on a lot of talented guys with power upside, kind of a comparable is what I meant. So, Gausman's not safe, but he's definitely priced correctly for all of that. 23.8% strikeout rate is not Kevin Gausman, but it's not bad. If I just made that a different name and gave you the stats, we'd be talking about this guy as a playable option against the Red Sox today. If it wasn't just a Kevin Gausman who's not as good as the old Kevin Gausman. Like, all right, fine. He's not. But these aren't bad numbers. 4.08 ERA, a 3.36 xFIP, a 5.1% walk rate, over 75 innings in 14 starts. So you're telling me the guy pitches regularly into the 6th inning and beyond? Like out of habit? That's what he wants to be out there doing? Yeah, he's given up a little bit more premium contact this year than usual. That's hurt him for some earned runs, or actually not even more than last year. Just a little happenstance in there. Those weird little 3 home run games. So that hurt him for those earned run spots. Even with a couple of meltdowns in there, that's not a bad ERA because some of those other starts, again, have been dynamite. It's not the best opponent, but he's cheap. It's a good value. I'd be raving about it a little bit more if I hadn't spent so much time raving about the value right there, and if he wasn't getting eclipsed by the value right there. But it's an interesting one, too, for sure. And if you notice, by the way, Hunter Brown on FanDuel slightly higher projected. But it's a playable value. It's just, a much better opponent than Hunter Brown's got to deal with. On the Red Sox side, Bayo, 20.3% strikeouts, a 5 ERA, but a 3.76 xFIP. Stuff Plus obviously likes the arsenal, 3 and change, almost 4 points better than average. Keeps the ball down to just a 5.4 degree average launch. 87.8 miles an hour of exit velo on the 7.3% barrel rate. Has lost a few barrels in there. He's given up a few more home runs than typical. 3 of them came in one game against the Cards. That was his worst game of the year. He has given up a handful of earned runs in each of the last like 7 starts. That's a little problematic. That's how we get to a 5.0 ERA. But again, I don't care as much about the ERA as I do about, say, the xFIP, or I'm sure his Sierra is in line with that. At some point, I got to build a little window to pop Sierra in there. It's just a better long-term indicator of ERA than xFIP is, but they're both pretty strong. 3.98 Sierra, perfectly serviceable. Proves the point. 10.4% swinging strike rate is pretty good. 1.40 whip is a little bit elevated. That's not a great walk rate, but that feels a little elevated for that walk rate. 295 BABIP though, so maybe not that much bad luck baked into the whip. I think he's very playable at 75, 76. It's just I question, what does the ceiling really look like for a fairly low strikeout pitcher against a very low strikeout lineup? 19.3% for this confirmed version of the Blue Jays lineup. It's pretty low strikeout with obviously some threatening hitters in there. Even in a down season for a lot of those threatening hitters, there are still, lurking in there is that talent on any given slate. So Bayo's in no way safe, and he's probably got a limited ceiling, but as an SP2 option, at least on DraftKings, I think he's on the board for sure. 76 on FanDuel, I think he just gets eclipsed by the Hunter Brown play, just like everybody else. Bats against, I think you probably lean... probably lean Red Sox. It's difficult to say because if Gausman comes out on form, then he blazes through them over 6-7 innings, and then your stack is shot in the foot. Suffice to say, I don't really love or prioritize either team as a stack. Vegas kind of agrees with that. 3.54 implied total, 4.04 implied total. So just a low-scoring spot. That's one of the ones that came down. If it bounced back up, you get, obviously a little bit more run upside, but even those are pretty low totals. So I think we lean pitching here, but if we're talking about believable upside, I think those lefties in the Red Sox lineup are more appealing. They're certainly performing better this season. So starting there, Jarren Duran off the top, 5,200, 3,600, appropriately priced, 17 stolen bases, creating runs 21% better than average, drives the ball very effectively with a 45.9% hard hit rate, has raised his barrel rate year over year, 184 ISO with only 5 home runs on the board is a strong ISO. So terrific option, very strong table setter for the Red Sox up top who can contribute multiple categories from the outfield. David Hamilton back in the lineup with his 19 stolen bases over just 152 plate appearances. Got to admit, I missed the window on Hamilton. I overlooked Hamilton as a potential player, and obviously he's proving his worth. 336 on base, creating runs 15% better than average. We'll see if the average, the on base, and everything hold up, but right now he looks like a good option if you're looking for lefties in this lineup. 2,800, both middle infield spots on FanDuel, 4,000 on DraftKings. Seems easily playable. Tyler O'Neill, 5,000, 3,000. A couple of home runs on a couple days, 15 now on the season, a 291 ISO. Raffy Devers right behind him with 14 and a 272 ISO. Premium power bats. 7.97 and 7.87 in the home run model, though, do put them a little bit behind the curve for home run potential. Even with Gausman, who gives up a lot of premium contact on the mound, he never really, as I said before, it doesn't really turn into home runs. It's not that he's keeping to elite launch angles, but these are more like line drive, low trajectory fly balls when they get in the air still on the average. So a lot of them don't turn into home runs. On the days that he's really off form and he does make mistakes, you get the 3 home run output like he had against the Orioles. So if we're picking home runs, I think you go right to the obvious guys, Tyler O'Neill and Raffy Devers. But you also get Connor Wong in there, who's got a fair amount of power and premium contact on the right day. He's also slashing 332, 395, 455, and is still absurdly just 3,600 at the catcher position on DraftKings. He remains my favorite catcher one-off on that site, and will, as long as he's hitting in the middle of that lineup like this, at that price. That's just, it's not fair. It's just silly to have him at that price. Masataka Yoshida for 3,300, 2,600 is also kind of broken across sites. Dude's a better hitter than he's been over these 113 plate appearances, just getting his feet wet again after coming back to the lineup after an injury. But last year, this is a guy who hit 289, 338, 445, hit 15 home runs, stole 8 bases, had a 109 WRC plus. That was in his first year in the show. It doesn't strike out. Lots of balls in play. It's exactly what you want for DFS. So I feel like he's very, very cheap for his potential. And Manuel Valdez is also cheap for his upside. He's got 5 home runs in 146 plate appearances, a 189 ISO, all that premium contact, 12% barrels, 44% hard hits. I've talked about him a couple times now. I think he's a very interesting, cheap option at second base on both sides when we're looking in the Red Sox direction. And again, they're a lower priority stack for the slate as a whole. But within that stack, if you're going there, I do think he's an interesting bat, and I don't think he's going to be overly popular. He doesn't hit for average so far. He doesn't get on base so far, but he's got a lot of pop in that bat. So kind of an interesting one to watch there. A lot less so for Dominic Smith, who's just kind of taking up oxygen at first base right now, but a lefty. You can go to him if you want him. Ceddanne Rafaela maybe coming on a little bit. 251, 279, 408. Few good games recently. 8 home runs, 10 stolen bases. 86 WRC plus. Still a long way to go, but maybe we're seeing some of the talent start to trickle through. Still 4 positions for 2,800 on FanDuel. A lot of appeal there. 3,400 shortstop outfield on DraftKings. You're a little bit clunkier there because now you've got Hamilton at shortstop on the DK slate, so it's positionally blocked there. And if you're putting him in the outfield, he is just another outfielder type at 3,400. So it's more limited there. I kind of like having the ability to play him and Hamilton together on FanDuel, pop them into both middle infield spots and move on with your life. I think it works a lot better that way. But playable on DK. If you're playing the Blue Jays, the quality as it's been for most of the season, I do think is just the top of the lineup with this reconfigured version. Vladdy is not far off the mark outside of the home run totals and, maybe some of his extra base hits with just a limited 118 ISO. But he's been creating runs. He's hitting the ball really hard. He only costs 4,700, 3,100 on FanDuel with dual position eligibility. You get a very cheap Justin Turner from the 2 spot. He's really been scuffling. They moved him up, I guess, to try and get him going here. 233, 325, 369. I think probably the worst 237 plate appearances stretch of Justin Turner's career, at least that I can remember. But remember, in that, he did have a hot start to the season. So if you catch the start of a 2-week hot streak for a guy who has had a career, and we're talking about like a 20-year career of being a very, very good hitter. So as a dart throw option, he's certainly not bad. Spencer Horwitz from the top 3,400, 2,500 effective so far. We'll see what he does going forward, but definitely a playable option if you're looking Blue Jays. Dalton Varsho, 6.79 to lead the team in the home run model. You've got him, Danny Jansen, and Vladdy showing the power upside, but all in the 6s in the model. 2/3 of the way to the magic number. Playable. Certainly, the potential for one of those 3 guys to hit a home run is certainly available. But again, Bayo keeps the ball down, 5.4 degree average launch. He has given up some home runs despite that this year. So you need him to make those mistake pitches. And these guys are capable of capitalizing on those mistakes. But by and large, he does keep the ball down, which plays into Vladdy's weakness. Danny Jansen's got tons of power, 5 home runs in 163 plate appearances with a 191 ISO. George Springer, just a really rough season. Probably also, like I said, for Turner, I would almost guarantee you that this is the worst 274 plate appearance stretch of George Springer's career. Pick any other 274 plate appearances. I would bet that they aren't that bad. 196, 288, 288, .092 ISO, and a 71 WRC plus, 5 homers, 8 steals. It's got to get better. It's got to. He can't. I don't think the lights just turned off for George Springer. That's the second time I snapped my fingers on this show. Weird. I don't think the lights just went off for George Springer. Maybe there's an injury there. I don't know. Addison Barger, 22-21, multi-position on both sides. Playable option for sure. IKF, Kevin Kiermaier, a lot more skippable down the bottom of lineup that I don't really like going to here. Gausman, Bayo, Red Sox, Blue Jays, all 4 corners playable, all 4 corners skippable. Twins I've got right here. What's going on, gang? EMAC in the chat. Look at that. Garrett Cole Raggins before and after Wheel of Fortune. EMAC saying hi to everybody. Larry C. calling out the EMAC article. I encourage everybody to check out EMAC's article every day. Does some great coverage, always has, always throwing in some good jokes as well. Yeah, Monty, if DJ plays, Monty talking about DJ LeMahieu, if DJ plays, somewhat like he was over the last couple of years, I do think that the pricing will get up a little bit. Certainly the number that you threw in there is realistic. If he looks anything like he looked several years ago, then we'll get even higher than that. But I think that's a little bit beyond hope at this point. Let's see, we just got the Rays lineup. Excellent. Rays going with John D, Brandon, Isaac, Josh, Randy, Richie, Johnny, Taylor. Can't just type Taylor. Austin Jackson? I want to say it's Austin. Pretty sure. Not Austin. The hell's his name? Alex. Alex Jackson. Alex, yeah, all right. I am right about that, right? I don't put the wrong guy in here. Yeah. What are you putting in here? Oh, illegal formation dropping some clips of Yankees pitchers throwing at people. Our resident Orioles fan. What's up, buddy? You guys got to throw it a little harder than that. You want to hurt Aaron Judge. Yeah, he won't be in the lineup today, but maybe we've got a pretty good pinch hitter on our bench now. Take that. Yes, Charles Moran as well. Happy Juneteenth to everybody who celebrates Juneteenth. Definitely glad that it's a major American holiday now. It's getting the credit that it deserves. There's also a lot of people out there trying to co-opt it like Cinco de Mayo was co-opted and everything and doing stupid things on Juneteenth, which is why I kind of say like happy Juneteenth to those who celebrate Juneteenth, because obviously it's a very specific and very important holiday, and I'll leave it at that. But yes, I agree with the call out, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I meant to and I forgot. So thank you, Charles. Mama's going to win it all for Juneteenth. I like it. Judge sitting today, but Cole is beating everyone and using his injury as an excuse. I do think Garrett Cole's going to hit somebody today. I wouldn't be surprised. Yanks lineup came out. Let's see what that looks like real quick. Wow, interesting. So they went with Ben Rice and Trent Grisham. That's the wrinkle I didn't expect. Otherwise, we got it basically right. Gleyber moved to the 5 spot, Soto to the 2, and Stanton to the 3. So got the players right-ish and the order not exactly right. So I'm not going to really give myself any credit there. This stretch is unchanged players-wise, but just in a slightly different order. No issues with the order that they put it in. I would have done it probably a different way to keep Stanton in this territory to capitalize more on his power, but I guess putting him there, replacing Judge's power upside behind the Volpe and Soto combination makes sense as well. And then DJ remains playable there. Ben Rice remains playable there. The interesting wrinkle is Trent Grisham. I did not expect them to go Trent Grisham in center against the lefty. I thought they would just shift Verdugo over because Verdugo's going to play lefty-lefty either way. And Grisham is, unless I'm completely misremembering, pretty inept against lefties. At a point, you just need a center fielder, so it makes sense on that level, but wasn't entirely expected. Where is the... Oh, right. This year, 13 plate appearances against the lefty. He's got 1 hit. 1 goddamn hit. in 531 career plate appearances against same-handed pitching. He's actually hit for a better average and on base. He's actually better same-handed? Interesting. Does some of that go way back? Because I thought I really remembered him struggling against lefties lately. No, he's good lefty last year. All right, so I guess I'm willing to concede the point. I was wrong. Trent Grisham not completely terrible against lefties. He's not good overall, so there's that. But when you're already dealing with not good, it's definitely not as big a downturn as I thought. For the career same-handed, we're dealing with 238, 329, 406 with a 106 WRC plus, and against righties, 203, 309, 370 with a 91 WRC plus. ISO is 168, 167, basically it's high. So, I don't think that makes him any more playable, really, from the bottom of the Yankees lineup, but he's in there. You can use him as a bottom-of-the-lineup dart throw. He's not really ideal for, like, a getting on base and keeping things going and turning things over, but maybe as, like, a cheap lefty with a little bit of home run upside in Yankee Stadium. Anyway, getting back to this one, this is where we were, right? Yeah. Joe Ryan, 26.9% strikeouts and just a 4.2% walk rate, 3.24 ERA, and a 3.31 xFIP. Pretty elite numbers going up against a Rays team that has a 28.1% strikeout rate on the season. A lot of scuffling players like we've looked at a couple times now. So really interesting spot for Joe Ryan. I know he's had a couple spots where he's let us down DFS-wise in big spots this season. I'm going back to the game log now. This is the one I didn't have. I want to see how long ago those were at this point. The rough one against Houston, 3 starts back, gave up 5 earned runs, struck out just 4. But outside of that, he's had on both ends, that's bookended by 2 7-inning starts on either side, in which he hasn't given up more than 2 earned runs, and he struck out at least 5 hitters, and 2 of those one he had 8 strikeouts, one he had 9. That's against Oakland, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and Washington. Only one of those teams is really good. And then he scuffled against the Astros. Bumpy-ish start against the Yankees back before that stretch on May 16th. Gave up just 4 earned runs, a home run, struck out 5 over 5 1/3. Good start before that, over 7 more innings against Toronto. Stretch of good 6-inning starts before that, a lot of quality starts mixed in. A few 3 earned run games in here, 4 earned runs, but 5 earned runs, that one against Houston is the peak. So it's just more the memory of, like, not bad starts necessarily, but bumpy DFS spots that sticks with me because he's always at a pretty high price. So when you get him and he goes in and he gives up those 3-4 runs, doesn't get to the quality start, maybe if you're looking for the quality start bonus from a guy who does pitch very deep into ball games, those are the ones that burn you a little bit and I feel like stick with you a little bit. But overall, it's been tremendous this year. And this is a super, super targetable team. On the other side, Taj Bradley, 31.6% strikeout rate, no question, an elite, an excellent stuff plus mark, 4.23 ERA, but a 3.12 xFIP, a 14% swinging strike rate is dominant. It's better than what Joe Ryan's doing on the other side. But he has a little bit of an issue with home runs and power. 14.7% barrels is tragic. 41.1% hard hits, 91.8 miles an hour of exit velo on the average, 5.06% home run rate so far this season. Some of that comes from a game 3 starts back on June 1st. He went 3 1/3, gave up 9 earned runs on 9 hits to the Orioles, including 4 home runs. So some of that comes from one game. He also had a 2 home run game and a 2 1 home run games this season so far in his 7 starts. But there's also the issue of last year's 21 starts, where he was doing very much the same thing. 104 2/3, 21 starts, was good for strikeouts, bad for ERA, but good for xFIP. Good, not as elite as he is this year for swinging strikes. I do think he's taken a step forward, for sure. But the home run issues are definitely still there. Arguably, they've gotten worse in the small sample with the higher barrel rate. That's a big jump in barrel, but I expect that's just happenstance. That comes down as we get more innings into this sample. But this could be potentially problematic, and that's what's pushing a little bit of the home run upside that you can see here for the Twins. And that's the only reason I get skeptical around the Taj Bradley play. It's the only reason that, for whatever dip in projection he's got compared to the four guys above him on the board, that's really where it comes from. Outside of that, he is a potentially fantastic option against what is a good Twins team. So it's a real interesting spot given that he's priced at only $8,000 on DraftKings. I think he's very, very playable over there as like one of those high-end, pricey-ish SP2s. But pricey-ish as compared to like the SP2s that you pick out of the garbage. But those guys are typically not nearly as good as Taj Bradley. So paying a few hundred more to $1,000 more for a Taj Bradley caliber pitcher is definitely worth considering over there. 91 on FanDuel, you really need him to avoid those home runs over there at that price. I do think he's playable, and I do think he's got a good ceiling there. But he's probably a little bit thinner, let's say, than all the guys above him, several of the guys below him. If you're going to an offense in this game, I do think it's the Twins side. 4.23 implied total there. Vegas is seeing a little bit of that home run potential as well. This is the one game that stayed firm at 7.5 runs earlier. 3.35 on the other side for the Rays. They've been really bad. Yandy Diaz, really off season. 101 WRC plus. All right, you're 1% better than average, but this is terrible compared to where he's been the last 2 years. That's way, way down the last 2 years. No power this year. It's been really bad. He's hitting the ball hard. We're just not seeing extra base hits. We're not seeing much success at all out of Yandy Diaz, who has had 2 very, very strong seasons in a row. Brendan Lau, 5 home runs and a 225, 331, 441 slash line, 216 ISO. This is right about who Brendan Lau is supposed to be. So if that continues for another, give him, 350 more plate appearances left in the year? It rounds into like that kind of a season with maybe he gets to 20 home runs. Still got a shot at it with as much time as left. Probably more settles in like 17, 18. Isaac Paredes, 4,200, 3,100, has 10 homers on the season. He's been their best player, 139 WRC+. A lot of power in his bat. Does it without frequent barrels or hard hits. I don't know exactly how he pulls it off. Doesn't really strike out. Puts good bat on ball in the right spots to generate home run power. Hit 31 last year. Josh Lowe, tremendous season last year. 86 week plate appearances so far this year. But a very good player. Easy to get to at 3,700, 2,600 if you're stacking up Rays against Joe Ryan for some reason. And that reason would be this is a collection of very cheap hitters that we just saw across the board have very strong seasons last year. And we're dealing with some really small samples for some of these guys. So we have belief in them. And it would be it would be a way to take talent at low ownership, low cost, knowing that you're doing it in a bad pitching matchup. So that would be the reason to, when I say if for some reason you're going to Joe Ryan, that's your reason. Randy Arozarena, 3,800, 2,700 is absurdly cheap if you just look at the name brand, but if you scroll over and look at the statistics, 179, 290, 337 slash line. He does have 10 homers and 7 steals, but just an 88 WRC plus. Major, major decline for a very talented outfielder so far this year. Problematic output for Arozarena at this point. Richie Palacios, 35, 25, 4 home runs, 9 stolen bases. Decent for counting stats. Gets on base. Creates runs at a slightly above average clip. A lot of strikeouts there, though. Right through that core of the lineup is a lot of strikeout targets for Joe Ryan. Guys at the bottom of the lineup are too small sample to fairly highlight there. But there's a lot of strikeouts here. DeLuca, 2 home runs, 5 steals. Sub Mendoza, 21 plate appearances of Sub Mendoza output for Taylor Walls. So far this year, 61 plate appearances, way below the Mendoza line for Alex Jackson. He's got power upside. We haven't seen it in the show, but he's got the at least rumor of power upside. And then Taylor Walls, we did see 22 stolen bases and 349 plate appearances with 8 homers last year. So a playable part maybe. I don't love blocking shortstop with him. Triple position eligible for just 23 on FanDuel makes him maybe a little bit interesting. But again, it's just not a team we're prioritizing stacking in any way at all today. This one I do think is an interesting spot to consider for some stacks. And I do think that, especially if Taj Bradley gets it all popular, I do think the Twins, for their upside, will probably end up a little bit underowned. Unless I'm dead wrong. I made Max Kepler the home run pick of the day. 9.34 in the model. Why didn't I take Trevor Larnach or Royce Lewis? Well, Royce Lewis was the obvious guy, and I like Max Kepler better than I like Trevor Larnach, so I took Max Kepler. Get off my back about it. He'll probably be less owned. He'll probably be a lot cheaper. Well, he is more expensive, actually. He's a lot cheaper than Royce Lewis. He'll probably be a lot lower owned than both of those guys on what I do think is going to be a Twins team that is largely owned in the single digits. When you've got two guys in that lineup showing way over 10 plus in the home run model, and then another 3 guys, 4 guys in the 8s and 9s, it's kind of appealing. We're not exclusively looking for home runs, which makes it good that this Twins team has been really good this year at getting on base, creating runs, getting hits. Hits are a little bit under-discussed, but hits are important. They're low strikeout. Most of their key hitters are low strikeout. You've got some great value pricing. Where was Carlos Correa yesterday? I forget. He's still 4,600, so he's still very, 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 very cheap. Pairing Carlos Correa and Max Kepler in the heart of that lineup, it makes it easy to reach for Royce Lewis at 6,100 and all his power and potential upside. Larnach is no great expense at just 3,900 for a guy with 13.07 in the home run model and 7 home runs with a 182 ISO over 151 plate appearances this year, a 46.4% hard hit rate, 9.1% barrels this year, 13.3 last year, 11.4 the year before. Trevor Larnach can really get a hold of one from the left side against a guy who gives up a ton of power. Willie Castro, 4,300, 3,100, quadruple position eligible on FanDuel. Get him at second base on DraftKings. You can play him in the outfield over there too. He's a little bit better upside than any given outfielder for 43. 5 homers, 8 steals, a 126 WRC+. Lewis, just absurd output. 52 plate appearances, 348, 404, 848, 7 home runs, a 500 ISO, a 243 WRC+. I can't even imagine the math on extrapolating that over 700 plate appearances, but it would be the best season of all time by a pretty wide margin. Carlos Santana, down lineup if you need a pivot for cheap pricing, has 11 home runs on the season. Just 7.5% barrels, 39% hard hits. Not great, but he's low strikeout. 15.7% strikeouts this year, 16.8% last year. He's always been fairly low strikeout, good at drawing walks. So he's a power hitter who does have that skill to put bat on ball. You just need to catch him on the right day where you get that power upside, but very, very cheap for that gamble. 189 ISO gives him a little bit of consistency for extra base hits on the back of the power, and a 113 WRC plus at this over 254 plate appearances. He's been pretty effective for them, and that's after a pretty cold start too. Byron Buxton has been basically the opposite, not all that effective for what the expectations are. 4,000, 2,900, very cheap any given slate upside for sure. And you just continue going back to it, at least in a few of your Twin shares. But certainly not the top priority bat in this lineup right now. Christian Vasquez, Austin Martin down the bottom of the lineup. Martin more playable between the two. A little bit of on-base, stolen base, wraparound kind of appeal from Austin Martin for cheap if you need the cheap bat. Interesting second base positioning on the FanDuel slate. Just outfield on DraftKings makes him a little bit less interesting, but playable from the bottom. Vasquez, 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases, a 31 WRC+. If he connects with the right pitch, obviously you'll get the low-owned home run. That's probably the guy who will end up getting it, right? Just 3.19 in the home run model. It'll be one of those days where it's just like, oh yeah, all these guys kind of succeeded, and then Christian Vasquez hit 2 home runs and nobody had him except for the 3 guys at the top of the standings. This is no endorsement for Christian Vasquez shares. Joe Ryan, Twins bats. Taj Bradley. If you want to be super contrarian and cheap, Rays bats. But they're not really on my board. Sean Manaea, Andrew Heaney. Weird little slate when I don't fully know what I want to do with these guys. do know that I want to put these lineups in. Do know that I want to tell you guys to hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Push that subscriber count up. At a certain point, we're going to start haranguing everybody to get us over 1,000 subscribers. So tell your friends. Tell your family. Correa and Elliot Ramos race to see which will hit 5K on first on DK, both massively underpriced, says Monty. True story. So, I mean, it's weird, right? Because I was about to respond to Charles Moran's comment about Correa looking like a bust at one point, and I really do dispute that. He had one season in 2020, 58 games. Oh no, that's 2020. That's 58 games. That was the COVID year. He hit 5 home runs. He played 58 out of 60 games. 264, 326, 383. 2 years prior to that, back in 2018, when he was still just 23 years old, he slashed 239, 323, 405, but still hit 15 home runs as a 23-year-old shortstop for the Astros in 2018. He was tremendous his first 3 years in the show, and wasn't bad in 2019, 2021, or 2022. He just took a dip triple slash wise, 233, 12, 399 last year, but he still had all his premium contact numbers. We've looked at this a lot. And then he still hit 18 home runs last year while mashing the ball when he made contact with it. So it was just a little bit of a dip and some bad luck. He dipped to a 272 BABIP last year. That's comparable to only his 2018 282 BABIP. Every other year he's had a 300 plus and has been a really good overall hitter with power from the shortstop spot. Where I think what you're thinking more of is when he was a free agent, which is where I was going to jump into what you said about the huge contract. It is exactly, that's exactly what I'm getting to, Charles. Is and it's no criticism of you, but it's an interesting point to talk about in my mind, because a lot of people perceive that he had that bad year, that he was a flawed player, because when he went out on free agency, he was going to be one of the huge free agency signings, and he famously was going to sign 10 years, $500 million or whatever with the Mets. And went through the meds and got rejected on the medicals. And they were worried about his knee or whatever it was. And then he went to, I forget, was it the Dodgers or another high-end organization? And the same thing happened, and he ended up having to go back to the Twins. And took a lesser contract. And that's where I started this by saying it's weird, because I was about to say that it's not really a monster contract, because it's major air quotes on this, only 6 years, 200 million, average annual value of 33.3, with vesting options for 29 through 32. So it's actually not a crazy contract. It's a big contract. I'm not saying that $33 million a year is not a big contract, but it was certainly not the contract that he was thought to be targeted for a few years ago. So from the Twins' perspective, you actually do have him on a bit of a discount. So it's really weird. And you're getting him back in elite form. So, bully for the Twins. But yeah, it is a very interesting case, as you said there, Charles, of perception versus metrics, which really this entire game that we play for DFS is. Which is why you should use tools like our pals over at acemind.io. Great optimizer over there. Help you build new lineups, help you get to creatively built lineups, things you might not be able to put together in your tiny little pea brain. Those optimizers see through the fabric of a human mind. They're better than us. It's the reason to use them. They find those combinations a lot more easily than we do, I promise you. And then you dump a bunch of thousands and thousands of lineups into a sim that builds thousands more, runs them against each other, gives you the top-end lineups by ROI, gives you the top-end lineups by win percentage. You can use that to extrapolate best plays and build one lineup that you really like of your own and throw in one lineup that way. You can use that to build 150 lineups, however you go about it. Check out acemind.io. Use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps over there. Gets you 20% off your first month. If you haven't heard me pitch that yet, that's probably the best I've ever done it. Let's move on. Sean Mania, Andrew Haney. Both very cheap. They both are capable of breaking off a good game against these two teams. 23.9% case for Manaea, but a 9.3% walk. 21.4% case for Andreini, but a manageable 6.2% walk. But he gives up 3.45% home runs on 42% hard hits, 91.1 miles an hour of exit velo. And for him, that's actually kind of good. 4.19 ERA with a 4.20 xFIP looks exactly like who he is under the surface. Same thing from Manaea. He gives up fewer home runs, but he gives up a decent amount of premium contact, more barrels this year, very similar hard hits, more manageable home run rate. They're very similarly ranked by Stuff Plus, but he outpaces his opponent slightly there. 4.11 ERA with a 4.14 xFIP for him. Both are capable of inducing swinging strikes, but have mediocre CSWs. Outside of depth of innings, and really Heaney hasn't even really given us that, they're essentially the same guy. There's not a lot of daylight between these two pitchers. If I had to pick, I would lean Manaea. He's obviously got the much stronger projection because the Mets are drawing a little bit of offense against Heaney's history. But I do think that he's not at all trustworthy, but the upside for him exists at these prices. And that applies to both of these guys. As I said at the top, given the 8-run total, the 4+ on both sides on a light day for offense overall, and just the availability of bats in these games with as far as like talented, appealing hitters / stars at cheap prices, this is an appealing game for offense. I said that about this game yesterday, and it kind of worked out, so I think you look right back there again today. And Heaney especially has been a pitcher that we've targeted fairly heavily for power upside in the past. Remember the old Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Heaney? So, kind of there. So I'm looking Mets a little bit. I like the fact that 3 of these guys are over the magic number for home run upside, including Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, and further down the lineup, Mark Vientos, who's very, very interesting at cheap pricing. Third base only on DraftKings for just $3,700, $2,900 on both corners on FanDuel. Both sides have him a little bit cheap. We're up to 112 plate appearances now. He's got a 238 ISO and 6 home runs with a 317, 375, 554 slash line. 12.7% barrels, 43% hard hits. Striking out 10 points less than he did in his stint with the team last year. He hit 9 home runs in that stretch, 233 plate appearances, just a 156 ISO. That was his first real exposure. Had a cup of coffee the year before. But now getting the full-time role and has really been productive in this stretch of 112. Does he cool off average-wise? Do the strikeouts go up a little bit from here? I say they probably do, but that doesn't mean he's not underpriced. I think he's certainly several hundred to 1,000 cheap there. Like, this is a guy that, I mean, obviously if the current production keeps up, that price will go up over like $5,000. That's pretty clear. But given what his talents are, even as this declines, let's say he ends up a 260 hitter and a 330 something on base, or even 320 something on base. Given what he does at the plate, he could easily be a $5,000 player on DraftKings end of next month. He doesn't have to continue the torrid triple slash pace. If he does, forget it. He'll be a $5,000 player in 2 weeks. Point being, Mark Vientos, a little bit cheap on both sides. Lindor, top of the board, 4,800, 3,500. Still very cheap for his talent overall. Still doing all kinds of Francisco Lindor things. 12 home runs, 11 stolen bases, a 112 WRC+, a 186 ISO. On base is down. Average isn't great, but there's still a hell of a lot of any given slate upside in there, and always worth going to, especially if you're building stacks of Mets. Where he loses some of his luster, I guess, is as a high-end one-off at shortstop. More of a stacking piece at this point, but he's still an elite stacking piece. Brendan Nimmo, 9 home runs, 5 steals, 357 on base. Dynamite for correlated scoring. Individual power upside in his bat, just 3,000 on FanDuel, 4,600 on DraftKings. He's cheap. JD Martinez continues to be absurdly priced, 4,300 on DraftKings. 8 home runs over 192 plate appearances, ridiculous. This is... Not that far off one another, right? I suppose I could have just used Pete Alonso there, but his numbers are down this year. JD Martinez, a proven power bat over the last many, many seasons. 215 ISO so far this year. Hitting for good average and getting on base as well, is a little bit of a bonus there. Yeah, he strikes out a lot, but that's way too cheap. This is correct-ish. This is just silly. Against Andrew Heaney, we can't get JD Martinez to... I mean, he should be above 5,000, and Pete Alonso should be 55. Go Mets. I'm starting to really like this spot for the Mets the more I talk about it. Alonso for 5,000, 14.30 in the home run model, 3,300 on the FanDuel slate. And it's a different play, FanDuel to DraftKings. My enthusiasm is more for you DraftKings folks being able to have these discounts that are available to you. FanDuel's a lot tighter price-wise with the key players. But I do think they're interesting on FanDuel, particularly with, like, if you go to Vientos or, Francisco Alvarez down the bottom of the lineup, makes them very appealing and much cheaper. But Pete Alonso, 15 homers at 225 ISO, averages at 243. The on base isn't ideal at 322, but it's Pete Alonso. He just mashes the ball when he makes contact with it. One of the best power hitters in baseball. You get him at a very fair price comparative to the other guys who have that kind of power. Starlin Marte, very good season from him so far. 7 homers, 12 steals, a 119 WRC+. Getting on base, hitting for average, hitting the ball hard again. He's also cheap. Alvarez hasn't done a ton yet this season, but he's only made 82 plate appearances, 1 home run. It's actually up to 269, 305 on the front end of the triple slash. Just a 109 ISO. Hasn't hit for a lot of extra base hits, hasn't generated much premium contact in the tiny, tiny sample. But we saw him hit for, elite contact potential. It was very up and down last year, but he's got ridiculous home run potential from the right side, again, against Andrew Heaney. Jose Iglesias, Harrison Bader. Bader's the better player at the bottom of the lineup. Interesting enough as a wraparound, I guess. He's more reliable for just random counting stat upside than he is actually at getting on base. But he's been involved enough this year, and he's been productive enough this year that he's at least playable from down there. Rangers side, Adolis Garcia back in the lineup. 13 home runs, but struggling otherwise. 194 ISO's good. 213, 270 not so good at the front end of the triple slash. Premium contact's been great. Strikeouts are right around where they should be, but he's walking less this year. 14% barrels is actually, it's great, but it's down a little bit from 16-1 last year. 46.8% hard hits, same thing, down from last year. But still an elite option. Just 4,000 on DraftKings. Really? Really? Against Sean Manaea? Adolis Garcia is 4,000. I'm starting to think that there's a path on DraftKings where you could just, given, not that I want to go anti-stack here, but maybe it speaks more to like two-man kind of setups with just how absurdly priced some of these guys are. You can get to a lot of individual bargains, which is weird price-based upside. DraftKings is doing, I don't want to say they're doing it a little bit different, but these prices feel like a kind of a shakeup. That's a misprice. I don't care where he's hitting. And like I said yesterday, I know that average counts a little bit more on DK. But I feel like they're overreacting to some of these batting average options. Especially when you're pairing it with Corey Seager for just 54, Marcus Semien for just 51. Yeah, that's Robbie Grossman in the 3 spot. That's not ideal. Kind of want Nathaniel Lowe in the 3 spot. I don't care that he's not been great. I know that he's a good enough hitter to hold that. But any way that you stretch it after the top 3 works really well. But it's starting to get interesting for the case of some individuals. We gotta don't react to me saying that because it's just me spitballing as I'm talking about it and words coming out of my mouth. But it's something worth looking at, I think. I'm curious to see how that would go through Sims. I'm curious to see, because Sims were already kind of pushing, more like mid-size, small stack, like 3-3-2 kind of setup or 3-3-1-1. Again, that's FanDuel thing. Obviously different configuration on DraftKings, but same concept. But it's specifically to DraftKings the way they're pricing. I'm very curious about, and it'll be too small sample to really draw any actual conclusions from. But it's going to be an interesting case to watch if they keep on doing with some of these prices for some of these established super high-end hitters. Anyway, continuing on, Josh Smith having a good season, very affordable himself, third base and shortstop on both sites. Easy enough to get to. I continue to not really believe that this holds up for a full season, but he's been very good over 247 plate appearances. Very easy to play against Sean Manaea, even though he's lefty-lefty. Wyatt Langford, we're not getting what we expected out of him, but he does have his second home run on the board now, so that's something. 2 homers, 6 steals. Playable righty bat for a cheap price if you're targeting the Rangers for a lot of shares. Nathaniel Lowe, I just mentioned before, 253, 346, 337, still getting on base effectively. That's why I think you just go with him in the 3 spot. Very capable lefty, 3,700, 2,800, very playable. Jonah Heim, 38-27, a playable catcher for some power. And then Ezekiel Duran, a little bit of a utility man type, 270, 306, 344, 2 homers and a steal. Has been limited for his production this year, certainly not as good as last year. But given last year's output and a little bit of belief in his upside, he's at least playable 4 positions for 2,500 on FanDuel, third base shortstop for 28 on DraftKings. Another very cheap option. Did they just say, like, hey, fuck Texas, like, we're going to make all these guys really cheap? Everybody in this lineup feels like at least several hundred too cheap. I know I kind of just whatever Robbie Grossman, but considering that he's only 2,900, 2,400 in third, last year over 420 plate appearances, he managed 10 home runs, a 156 ISO created runs, 2% better than average. Year before, 7 homers, 6 steals. He's good for that odd any given slate output, but he is most definitely not a good hitter. So again, weird to have him hitting third. I guess switch hitter, so you go with that option. Why not do that with Jonah Heim then? Get a better bat in there. Either way. Mets bats, Rangers bats, but given the discount on the Rangers, not that the Mets are expensive themselves, but with how cheap the Rangers are on DraftKings, that might actually flip a little bit on DK. Call it a tie on DK. They're cheap on FanDuel as well, but nowhere near as cheap. Manaea over Andrew, but you're picking your poison there either way. I don't love either option. They're both playable. Don't love either one. Astros and the White Sox. We got to speed things up. It's 5:13 already. There's been a lot to talk about on this slate. Doesn't look like, do we have the Astros on underdog? Let's see. Just got it. I just got it like 10 minutes ago. I love how I can say just got it every time because I have to reload the page, and that means it just popped up. No Jordan Alvarez again. Hummel. Oh, Francis X. Hummel. Yes. I have no idea who Hummel is. Cooper Hummel? Cooper Hummel. This is a name I do not know. He made 201 plate appearances for the Diamondbacks in 2022? Sure. I do not remember ever hearing this name in my entire life. All right, so it's not General Francis X. Hummel, U.S. Marine Corps. Credit to anybody who knows the reference. Cooper Hummel is the dead minimum price on both sites. He's made 1 plate appearance this year. He's got a negative 100 WRC plus, so he might as well have not made that plate appearance. In years past, Mr. Hummel, in those 201 plate appearances he made with Arizona back in 2022, hit 3 home runs and stole 4 bases while slashing 176, 274, 307, striking out 31.8% of the time, but walking 11.4% of the time. He has spent most of his life in the minor leagues. He's 29 and a half, almost exactly. 201 plate appearances in AAA for the Astros this year, 7 home runs, 8 stolen bases. Slashing 301, 423, 509. But again, playing in AAA as a 29-year-old, you discount a little bit of that. Striking out at just a 17.4% clip, walking 16.4. He's certainly been capable, probably worthy of getting an opportunity, but by no means a target, by no means somebody really worth chasing against Garrett Crochet, who has been just absolutely spectacular this season. So I think that's a spot where we can just look at. It's certainly not a threat to Crochet. Let's put it that way. And now we at least know who he is. Crochet for 9,200, 10.5, 35.7% strikeouts. That's pretty good. 2.43 xFIP underneath a tidy 3.16 ERA, a 104 mark by Stuff Plus, 14.8% swinging, 30.6% CSW. He's been very good at limiting premium contact. Has let a few home runs slip in that bumpy stretch of starts. He had three rough starts early on. The two elite ones, then three elite ones. Then, three rough ones in a row. 5 earned runs, 7 earned runs, 5 earned runs. One of those games he gave up 3 home runs. And then has been just dominant since. Has not given up more than 2 earned runs in any start since then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of his last 8 have been quality starts. He struck out double digits in 4 of those. 11, 11, 10, and 13. Absolutely dominant, fantastic pitcher. 9,200 is cheap on DraftKings, 10.5 appropriate on FanDuel, even against a low strikeout Astros team. I didn't time my clicks correctly with my saying low strikeout Astros team, but they are 15.1% strikeouts. But that is the version of the Astros. You would get similar-ish numbers if it was Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez in here, because they don't strike out either. But don't let it fool you. This is a diminished version of the Astros lineup. You're also got a 0 in there from Mr. Hummel with his 1 plate appearance. Taking him out, that already elevates it to 17% as an average. And if we also clip unfairly Mauricio Dubon from that, 18.4. That's a little bit more like who they actually are, but still very low strikeout team. So Crochet's got his work cut out for him to get to 10, 12, 13 strikeouts tonight. But I definitely think 8, 9 is still easily on the board for who he is and what he's done. 6, 7 in clean innings, very on the board. Love the pitcher, love the spot. And then the best bargain of the day, and probably the guy who should be the most highly owned pitcher of the day, just 7,000 on DraftKings for Hunter Brown, just 7,800 on FanDuel for Hunter Brown, is just silly against the White Sox. He's as mispriced as some of those hitters we've talked about, probably even more so. Over 68 and a third this year. I understand that he's got a 5.0 ERA. Understand that I don't care about ERA. 3.58 xFIP. 25.6% strikeout rate. He's walked a few too many. He's a young pitcher, that happens. 9.8% walks. All right, fine. 1.43 whip. Fine. It's manageable. All of that is manageable. He's very good at keeping the ball in the yard by and large. 8.3 degree average launch, 4.8% barrels means that any of these 3.7% home runs are just happenstance. Excuse me. 3 starts back, he gave up 2 home runs, but just 3 earned runs and 5 hits. Struck out 7 against the Twins. Struck out 9 Tigers over 7 innings, while shutting them out and allowing 5 hits in his most recent start. 7 strikeouts, 4 problematic walks, but no runs, just 2 hits against the Angels over 6. Quality start. 9 strikeouts over 6 against pals over in Seattle. 1 earned run, 4 hits. His low-end games are the times where he runs into, 3 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts. Maybe the home runs can ding him in spots like that. But given how good he's been over this stretch of 5 straight quality starts, again, with 2 of those games having 9 strikeouts and 2 of the others having 7 strikeouts, I just think we're talking about a young pitcher who's found his form again and facing the worst lineup in baseball. Love the upside for Hunter Brown today. 24.1% for this group of hitters in the confirmed White Sox lineup. 1 real threat in the entire lineup, with apologies to Tommy Pham and partly to Paul DeYoung. It's really Lou Bob and a bunch of jerseys. I see no reason not to play Hunter Brown enthusiastically, even if he gets more popular. And given that other places aren't projecting him for popularity, so much the better. Advantage us. Not really drawing White Sox bats against. I have enough healthy respect for Hunter Brown. If he got more and more popular given the low pricing and that everybody in the universe should be enthusiastic about this spot, that would give you more reason to hedge and more reason to say, all right, on its own, the White Sox maybe is a contrarian angle. They're very cheap. I do like Luis Robert. I see that he's above the magic number in the home run model. Maybe we go to Paul DeYoung along with that at 7.43. He's got 14 home runs this year and a 237 ISO. There's reasons to believe, yada, yada, yada. I still land mostly on the Hunter Brown side of that. If you do go that angle, though, Tommy Pham off the top, 4,400, 3,000. Having a good year. 160 plate appearances, 350 on base, 283 average, 116 WRC+. Tommy Pham is Tommy Pham. He's always been a good outfielder. At worst, a good functional working part in a stack who can hit a home run or steal a base on any given slate, correlate, score some runs. Gavin Sheets for 33, 26, 7 home runs from the left side of the plate, 35.1% hard hits, an underwhelming player at best. Lou Bob, 7 home runs in 81 plate appearances now, a 311 ISO. He's cooling. 23.8% barrels, 54.8% hard hits. Obviously, ridiculous power output over just 81 plate appearances. In general, a very good overall player, very good multi-category contributor, the key bat in any White Sox stack. Andrew Vaughn, 36, 29, 9 home runs on the season, a 154 ISO. Moderate output that should be better given his ability to hit the ball hard, but just never has been. Benintendi, a skippable slap hitter who's supposed to hit for average and does not. Again, DeYoung, 14 home runs, 237 ISO is the only reason to go to him. Lennon Sosa, Corey Lee, and Nicky Lopez, all pretty skippable at the bottom. Lopez, a little bit of back control balls in play, but hasn't really done so far this year. Lennon Sosa, lower end for those skills and lower end output. Actually higher end output this year. Over 97 plate appearances, 253, 292, 374, 2 home runs, 2 steals. Not ideal. Corey Lee does have 6 home runs and 5 steals in 181. If you needed that last option from the White Sox, if you're on DK anyway, it's probably Corey Lee, but that's not all that appealing. Garrett Crochet, but it's really probably Hunter Brown just because of that absurd price. But Garrett Crochet, Hunter Brown, slightly below that. If you're playing bats from this game, for me, it's the Astros, but I don't love that either. I didn't break that lineup down, did I? Damn it, forgot about that. All right, forget that I ranked that. Pretend you don't know where I like everything. Jose Altuve off the top, 52-39, 11 home runs, 10 steals, a 129 WRC+. And then it kind of falls off from there. We get Mauricio Dubon, who's been good at putting the ball in play and correlating and maybe getting on base a little bit this year. He's an interesting hitter in stacks. He's an interesting cog in the machine. And it's not a bad spot hitting second, certainly, for a cheap price with multi-position on FanDuel. 3,200 in the outfield on DraftKings is a little bit less appealing. But he's not the reason that we're going to the Astros, right? He's just a very low strikeout, kind of interesting for balls in play type of hitter who can churn the lineup a little bit, maybe keep things going, maybe correlate, maybe score some runs. That's really the limit of his appeal. Now he's hitting second. Alex Bregman up to 9 home runs, really pulling it together, 241, 303, 400. Still a lot of work to do, but it's nice to see the growth. Shiner Diaz, 38, 28, remains cheap as a catcher, cleanup hitter. Can always go there. 49.5% hard hits, 7 home runs in 244 plate appearances. Definitely a dynamite one-off catcher option if it's not Garrett Crochet on the mound. Jeremy Pena, playable shortstop, 39, 29, having a good year, 278, 314, 375. That said, it has started to cool off somewhat. We'll see where we end up. Needs to turn it back on a little bit. Jake Myers at 31-27 in the outfield. A playable part with 6 homers and 6 steals. Victor Caratini, we talked about yesterday. Sneaky power output from the catcher. He's got 4 home runs and 114 plate appearances. He's an interesting price pivot. He was one of the ones we were talking about in Discord yesterday. Going from Shiner Diaz to Victor Caratini for $1,000 less gives you the ability to purchase different things at pitcher or different combinations of hitters while maintaining a reasonably similar power output from the catcher spot. You sacrifice going from 4 to 7, a tenth of a potential plate appearance? It's really not that big a sacrifice to save $1,000. So Caratini is interesting. Excuse me. Chas McCormick, and then Hummel down the bottom of the lineup. McCormick not having a great season after a very good season, and after before that several seasons as like a secret weapon in the bottom of the Astros lineup for cheap. Now he's just been kind of weak, so maybe that makes him a little bit sneaky again. We know there's tons of talent there. Last year, 22 homers, 19 steals in 457 plate appearances, 216 ISO, 133 WRC plus. That guy's not gone. He's just starting the season slow. And then there's Cooper Hummel. So again, Garrett Crochet slightly above Hunter Brown, but on value, Hunter Brown probably could exceed him. And then if you're playing bats, it's Astros for me, not the White Sox. If you're playing the White Sox, it's really only for contrarian reasons. Hunter Brown is, not completely untargetable, so I get it. It's just a really low-end lineup to do that with. As I've said a bunch of times, when I am taking those angles, I still like to have a at least reasonably capable offense. A moderately good team. A lot of those White Sox angles do fall short, believe it or not. Travis, I'm hoping Crochet takes the plane back to Houston after a deal gets done. Yeah, Larry, Crochet is one of the biggest meatballs on the trade block right now. He's almost certainly getting dealt. And then Luis Robert, big rumor that he's going to get dealt as well. White Sox are very open for business, let's put it that way. Crochet's just on a 1-year, $800,000 contract. Arbitration after this year. Just 3 years of service time, so you've got, 4 years of team control remaining? 4 ARB years? I think this is his first ARB year. So he's an interesting acquisition for teams. He was a reliever before this year, and obviously is now a dominant starter. If I'm the White Sox, I need to get paid for that asset. But they're almost certainly going to move him. Crochet isn't going to go to Houston. Houston might dump. Ooh, I don't know about that. I don't know that Houston just bails on the season. TJ for Bradish. Shame. Good pitcher. Keeps on happening. Rockies, Dodgers. Feltner we don't need to talk about. Just don't play it. Has had a couple of okay starts on the road. Really hasn't been good at Coors. 5.71 ERA, but a 3.87 xFIP underneath it, a 20.2% strikeout rate. Normally you'd be saying, all right, that's okay. The output's been reasonable. 75 2/3, he's giving you decent depth. But again, most of those good starts have been on the road. Last time out in a home start with Pittsburgh in town, gave up 4 earned runs, 3 home runs. Struck out 8 in that one. Odd strikeout output for him against the Pirates. But 3 home runs and 4 earned runs probably ruined that DFS day at any price. A pretty good start in St. Louis, but this one's in Colorado. 7 strikeouts in that one. 4 runs. It wasn't all that good. It was 2 hits, 4 runs, but none of them earned. So a deceptive start in St. Louis. Back at home, the start before that on June 3rd, facing Cincinnati, he gave up 8 earned runs on 10 hits with a home run and only 3 strikeouts. Also faced Cleveland at home for 4 1/3 the start before that. Gave up 5 earned runs, 7 actual runs on 8 hits, 2 home runs, 1 strikeout. Four earned runs in a home start further back than that. Had 1 good home start against Texas on May 11th. Only gave up 2 earned runs, struck out just 4. Went 6, so a quality start. And then had a monster home start back on April 6th, facing Tampa Bay. Struck out 10. 1 run on 2 hits over 6. If you get that Ryan Feltner today and you get it right for $5,000 on DK, you better get your bats right and win the slate because, man, It would be a shame not to win after getting a play like that right. It's not a play for me. 5,000 on DK, no thanks. 7,000 on FanDuel, no thanks. Not against the Dodgers at Coors Field. Bobby Miller's the interesting one. I'm curious at what the pitch count looks like. Just feels like, as I said at the top of the show, like why would you go to a kid returning for the first time at Coors Field? Just seems a little problematic, but he is an excellent young pitcher. Last year, 23.6% strikeouts over 124 and a third, 3.76 ERA with a 3.75 xFIP, a very good swinging strike rate. Came out of the gate this year over 11 and 2/3 in his first 3 starts, 36% strikeout rate. It's pretty dominant. Those came on March 29th, April 5th, and April 10th. Part of it comes from 6 innings in a start against the Cardinals in which he struck out 11. He did blow up in his second start, was at the Cubs, lasted just an inning and 2/3, struck out just 3, gave up 5 earned runs, struck out 4 in the next game, but only lasted 4 innings, and then Gonzo since then. That was against the Twins. He gave up 2 earned runs on 5 hits in that one. So that inflated strikeout rate is obviously very inflated. So that's why I've got the last year's numbers on the screen. Probably settles into somewhere in between. Call it 27% strikeouts, 28% maybe, and all goes well through this year. But point being, he is potential elite output. I just don't know that we're getting a full start here. I don't really see the reason to push him beyond, say, 5 innings. In his minor league starts, 4 and 2/3 in the last one, 4 innings in the one before that, 3 and a third, 3 innings. So I just see like a 5-inning start, especially if he's succeeded at Coors Field over 5 innings. Just get him out of there, right? Get him out of there, let him get the win, let him get some pats on the back. Good job, kid, go sit down. So not the most appealing DFS play in the world. If you're inclined to throw darts at 7,600 on DraftKings, he's got monster strikeout upside for as long as he's in the game. On FanDuel, I just wouldn't do it. That said, it does have a limiting impact on the Rockies' bats on the other side. For the innings that he pitches, I'm not really interested in the Rockies. Even with the improvement in their lineup with Nolan Jones back, with the interesting power bats like Michael Toglia in the lineup, I just don't love the opportunity when they're facing extreme high-end pitchers. The reason I was saying they were maybe interesting against Buehler last night was just Buehler scuffling. I was also saying that I thought Buehler was playable the other way, and I stand by that. Obviously, it didn't work out. But I thought they were a little bit more appealing there. I think Buehler may be kind of trending that way in their careers at this point. Or like with the quality of their stuff at this point as far as DFS is concerned. So they're less appealing, but they're cheap. And they're at Coors Field. So anything can happen. Tovar's got 11 home runs off the top of the lineup, a 199 ISO, 7% better than average for run creation. Pretty cheap as a shortstop option in the leadoff spot. Do we have this confirmed? We do have this confirmed. And it's not Tovar in the leadoff spot. Leadoff Shohei Ohtani again. He hit one from Colorado to approximately Louisiana last night. Absolute bomb. 20 home runs on the board for Ohtani. So it's Brenton Doyle at the top of the Rockies lineup today. Tovar moving to the 3 spot. 44-33 for the leadoff man. 6 home runs, 18 stolen bases. Doyle's been productive. Right on the line for run creation at 100 WRC+. Good for counting stats. Good for DFS so far this year. Believable output. Had a decent season for DFS output last year. Love Nolan Jones back in the 2 spot. 4,800, 3,200. I know that the first 125 plate appearances this year haven't been great, but he's a dynamite player. Excuse me. Dynamite player, as we looked at yesterday, went 20-20 in just 424 plate appearances last year with a 245 ISO and a 135 WRC+. Tovar just went through just as playable from the 3 spot as he was the leadoff spot. McMahon, 5,000, 3,500, 12 home runs. Premium contact continues. The triple slash has cooled off a little bit, but it's still some of the best output of his career. Fairly priced for the output and fairly priced for a lefty bat against a young righty at Coors Field. Could do a lot worse than Ryan McMahon, even as a one-off, honestly. Jacob Stallings for 43.29. Good output so far this year, over 120. Very good slash line, 131 WRC+. 4 homers to boot. Pretty good premium contact. Not a bad option at catcher. Talia, 5 homers in 97 plate appearances now. 200 ISO. Needs to get the consistency in gear a little bit, but does have a ton of power available in that bat. So I love the pricing. Like the player. Eleodis Montero back in the lineup. Surrounded by Jake Cave on one side, who's just another outfielder on both sides. Moderately playable. And then Adil Amador at the bottom of the lineup, who is kind of interesting. One of their top prospects. Hasn't done much with his first 29 plate appearances, but getting some regular opportunities for a very cheap price in the middle infield. So Amador's kind of interesting. Montero's interesting for his power upside. He's got 4 home runs in 234 plate appearances and a very weak slash line. But somewhere along the way, he's going to remember how to hit for power or realize how to do it in the show. And I do think he finds his form and really hits his stride. So he's very cheap, 3,200, 2,800. Bad position in the lineup, and I like Bobby Miller's chances to, for as long as he's in the game, take the top off the quality of the Rockies here. So not an overly appealing Rocky stack, but they are cheap and they are in Coors Field. So there's something with that. Ohtani, up to $7,000 on DraftKings. Looky. 5,200 on the FanDuel slate. Very expensive. Some of the most expensive pricing we've seen for a hitter this year. He's more expensive than several of those pitchers. He's the exact... So DraftKings came out of the gate today and said, for the same price, you can have Shohei Ohtani at Coors Field leading off for the Dodgers, or you can have Hunter Brown pitching for the White Sox. Of course, you can have both. I just find it hilarious that they're priced the same. Although, honestly, they're projected roughly the same. Ohtani's projected about a point and change lower, but similar. He's just a ridiculous talent. 20 home runs, 16 steals, a 180 WRC plus, a 292 ISO. Nothing he can't do on a baseball field, and add 20% to that for being at Coors Field. Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez. Freddie's really pulled it together. 6,400, 4,200, 10 home runs. The powers arrived on the season, a 199 ISO. Everything else was not all that far off the mark. He is slipped back below 300, but we're flirting with 300. He'll be perfectly fine and already is. Teoscar hit that home run after striking out last night to win the game. That was a big spot. 18 home runs, 248 ISO. If you didn't see that call, it was pretty egregious. Andy Pages hitting cleanup tonight, 4,400, 3,400. Pretty cheap for a kid with a lot of power and a lot of ability to drive the ball at Coors Field. 10.3% barrels, 44.8% hard hits for Pages. Doing interesting things with the bat for such a cheap price in this ballpark, hitting 4th for the Dodgers tonight against Ryan Feltner. Yet another guy that's a spot you could easily pluck for that lineup that I'm building in my head on DK of just like cheap individual guys. Pages makes a lot of sense for that team. Jason Hayward, Gavin Lux, Kevin Biggio, Enrique Hernandez, Austin Barnes. Not the highest end of Dodgers lineups on the back end. You can tell what the Dodgers think of the Rockies and Coors Field, and regardless of who they put in Dodgers uniforms tonight, their chances of winning this game. So, you know, Hayward's good, and there's definitely any given slate upside there. 250, 344, 488, a 238 ISO, 4 home runs. That's over 93 plate appearances. Had a good year last year, bouncing back after we all thought, I think, that he was, basically shot offensively. He was there just to play, get in there against righties and play some defense. But the fact that his offense came roaring back all of a sudden kind of makes him interesting. Very cheap lefty bat in Coors Field against a bad righty. Interesting option. Gavin Lux has underperformed his talent, but is playable at second base for cheap pricing in Coors Field. Enrique Hernandez, again, one of the worst stretches that I can remember of his career. 4 position eligible for 2,700 on FanDuel keeps him alive. 3,300 at third base. It's very cheap for a Coors Field bat, but it's still not ideal. Biggio for 36, 27 with 4 positions on FanDuel. It's basically the exact same thing, except that this is exactly who Kevin Biggio has always been, just kind of a bad hitter. So it's odd output in a negative sense for Enrique Hernandez. Less surprising for Kevin Biggio, but they've both been bad. And then Austin Barnes, just a backup catcher. Dodgers bats. And then really, for me, it's probably just nothing else in this game. I do think across 150 lineups, you better grab some Rockies shares. But I don't expect a lot from the Rocks today. I know they're at 4.45. That's a Coors Field effect. But even if you get, call it 4 innings out of Bobby Miller, if it's an elite 4 innings, if he's on form, which he wasn't in those minor league rehab starts, but if he is, really limits their appeal. And then you get into what is a good Dodgers bullpen. Maybe not the best day in the world to play Rockies, but it's Coors Field, and they're cheap. And if you play either pitcher, it should probably be Bobby Miller, but I'm skeptical about the innings upside. Brewers, one of the top stacks on the board today. Let's see if we got either of these lineups. Doesn't look like we do. I know we're coming up on 5:41. Talking for a while today. A lot to go through for the 8-gamer. We're also meandering a little bit. Right on cue, 8-game steps in and says, interesting that, this is an 8-gamer. Let's go. Love it. I'm really interested to see what DeGrom looks like, Jeremy. Yeah, see, the reason that I don't rule out Houston as a destination for Crochet is it's less of a. It's not like they're going out and buying a superstar on a giant contract. It's a guy with a 800 and change $1,000 contract with manageable years of arbitration. Yeah, he's going to get a spike in arbitration this year for sure, but it's not like the arb's going to give him $30 million. So a guy like that, I think it does make sense because it's also a building block, right? You go out, you acquire him for whatever you have to deal for him, and if we get our act together, there's no reason we can't make up those 7 games that we're back from the wild card. We've got excellent hitting if we can get these guys back healthy. And when you add Crochet back into the top of the rotation, and you can work things out with the Verlanders and all of the world, that bullpen at some point, I believe, has to come around. There's just too much talent in that bullpen. And that's been, to me, their biggest issue this year outside of the pitching, the starting staff injuries. But I just don't see – yeah, I don't think Houston goes in and buys like a Luis Robert or they're certainly not going to go trade for – I can't think of a veteran pitcher on like a expiring contract, but they're not going to go get like a Corbin Burns type level of a pitcher on a gigantic contract, right? But I think Crochet, since he slots in cheap as like an investment property, is kind of interesting to them. And I think that's the kind of move that I could see. But every team in the league is going to want to try and trade for Garrett Crochet for that exact reason. So Tyler Anderson mostly looking like a target here. Yeah, he's got a 2.58 ERA, but under the covers, he's got a 5.08 xFIP over 14 starts, 87 and a third innings. Striking out just 16.2, walking 10.6 is problematic. It's actually a pretty low whip for that high of a walk rate and that low of a strikeout rate. It's on the back of a 225 batting average on balls in play against. To say that he's been getting lucky would be an insult to the concept of luck. That is remarkable. 94.06 by Stuff Plus. Stuff Plus doesn't really like his arsenal. He's given up 9.3% barrels, but just 2.8% home runs on a 17.9 degree average launch. That doesn't really click, although he has been managing the premium contact of it, the exit velo, the hard hits. And that's kind of what he's always done. He's managed to avoid giving up the homers despite being a fly ball trajectory pitcher who does give up barrels. This is one saving grace. And you can see the impact that has on some of these Brewers hitters in the home run department. But the Brewers are still drawing very strong projections. They were, I think, on straight average, the number 2 team on the board. A lot of balls in play, a lot of potential to draw walks. This team is very good at doing both of those things. It seems like a big upside day for the Brewers. Second highest total on the board at 4.06. Or 4.60, rather. Joey Ortiz from the top of the Brewers lineup for 3,800, 2,900. Really appealing. Third base on DraftKings, third base, second base on FanDuel. Love him at second base, like him at third base on either side. 6 home runs, 4 stolen bases, a 187 ISO. Has created runs 42% better than average with a 383 on base as a rookie. Having a tremendous season. William Contreras, 55-35 across sites. If he's back in the lineup today, he didn't play yesterday, right? Or was he back in the lineup yesterday? I forget. Either way, assuming he's in the lineup today, an elite catcher bat. 304, 366, 464. Power upside, contact upside, the works. Love the option to throw him against Tyler Anderson here. Christian Yelich, no concerns about a lefty-lefty against a lefty like this, or in general with Christian Yelich. 7 home runs, 14 steals, 324, 400, 506. Guess who's having a really good season? Christian Yelich. Willy Adames, 10.9% barrels, 40.3% hard hits. Relatively cheap at shortstop now for a guy with 12 home runs and 10 steals. That's all we really care about for DFS. I don't care that the average has come down that much. The on base is normalized back to Willy Adames kind of territory. We always knew that was going to happen along the way. As long as he's still hitting for power, stealing some bases when he does get on, perfectly fine with it. The price is right. Reese for $4,000, 2,800, very cheap. 10 home runs on the year. A lot of inconsistency baked in there, but a lot of power as well. It's basically the same story for Gary Sanchez. If he's in the lineup, 3,700, 2,600, very cheap for somebody who just basically hits a home run when he makes contact. He's got 7 on the year and 154 plate appearances, a 196 ISO, just a 217 average and a 292 on base. Gary doesn't like stopping at first base. He likes either walking back to the dugout or making the trip all the way around the bases. That's what he does. 13.3% barrels, 42.9% hard hits. Those numbers are actually down from the last couple seasons, despite still being pretty terrific. Blake Perkins is cooled back off, as we looked at yesterday. Still a playable part with multi-category contribution possibility. The hell was I trying to say? With the potential to contribute in multiple categories. Jackson Chourio, same thing. The rookie scuffling a little bit, but all the talent in the world for a fair price at the bottom of the lineup. And then Bryce Turang just down to the bottom of the lineup is the way they configure it against lefties. An excellent wraparound option, especially if you expect them to chase Tyler Anderson. You just get Bryce Turang for a fair price, $4,600, $3,000 at diminished ownership because he's hitting ninth. Dude's getting on at a 352 clip, has 26 stolen bases, a 115 WRC plus, hitting for average. Interesting player. The Brewers have Freddie Peralta on the mound for 9,600, 9,500, so I am interested. 4.38 ERA flies in the face of a 3.39 xFIP. That's much better. 30.7% strikeout rate on 13.4% swinging is terrific. 8 points above average for via Stuff Plus. He's given up some barrels this year, given up a few home runs. He gave up a few last year as well. Before that, it wasn't really a problem. He was spectacular at inducing weak contact, limiting barrels. Ran into more contact these last couple of seasons. Really hasn't hurt him overall. Right? Like the ERAs, the xFIPs aren't far off year to year. It doesn't really matter either way. xFIP takes home runs out of the equation anyway. And the strikeout rates are up, so I'll exchange a couple extra points of it. And this is a small sample, by the way, too. But prior to that, just to extend that point, it was very weak contact in 2021, and we don't have the contact numbers prior to that. But these 2 years, he was really good at inducing weak contact. Strikeouts were at 33.6% this year. So running in the last 2 years, we'll take a consistent 30+% strikeout rate in exchange for a little bit more premium contact that doesn't really hurt him. You do get the days like the last time out, where the premium contact did hurt him a little bit. 6 earned runs on 10 hits, 2 of them being home runs. 6 strikeouts, 1 walk. That was against Cincinnati. Not the best start in the world. Not one that you really want to forgive. Freddie should have beaten that team pretty handily that day. Only went 3 1/3 against Detroit. I forget what happened there. 3 strikeouts, 5 walks, faced 19 hitters. Gave up 3 earned on 4 hits. Bumpy one. Another bumpy 3, another one that he should have dominated against the White Sox of all teams. Struck out 7, but gave up a homer, allowed 3 earned on 4 hits. It's not a tragedy, but it's definitely not what we expect from Freddie Peralta against the worst team in baseball. "11 strikeouts over 5 2/3 against the Cubs, 1 run on a solo homer, 2 walks, 3 hits. That's more of a Freddie Peralta kind of a start. Hopefully the public has it just a little bit obscured by those 3 rough ones in a row. Maybe they've lost a little faith on such a deep pitching slate with so many other similarly priced, similar upside options. Makes Freddie kind of interesting if he's going to go under owned against a weak Angels team that is very gettable for strikeouts. I like the option. He projects out great. I'm a full believer in Freddie Peralta's talent. I don't think the Angels are all that appealing, even in a contrarian sense, even in a maybe Freddie struggling a little bit sense. I really don't love it. If you do go there, your priorities are Renifo and Ward from the top end, probably or certainly Logan O'Hoppe, and then probably still for me Brandon Drury, but you can make a strong argument for Zach Neto just taking that infield spot, depending on how you're positioning. Neto's actually having a pretty decent year. 264 plate appearances, 10 home runs, 9 steals, 253, 300, 441, creating runs 8% better than average in bad spots in the lineup on a weak team. It's kind of impressive. Moniak and Adele really inconsistent down the bottom. A lot of limitations for those two. There's a lot of any given slate upside, especially for Adele. 12 homers, 9 steals in just 220 plate appearances. It's good output, but everything else has been bad. Super targetable for strikeouts for a pitcher like Peralta. Mickey Moniak, also very targetable for strikeouts. So, not that much ability between these two to turn the lineup over with any kind of reliability. Makes it really limiting for stacking. Drury is better than... Whoops, wrong one. Than his output has been so far this year. We looked at it yesterday. A lot of home runs over the last 2 years. I do think over time, if he rounds out the year, it comes around. But right now, really bouncing along the bottom. He's very cheap, though. O'Hoppe's got 9 home runs and a 283, 29, 468 slash line. 125 WRC plus is second best behind the 126 that Renifo's got. 108 WRC plus with 12 home runs to tie for the team lead with Joe Adele for Taylor Ward in the 3 spot. Again, 1, 2, 3 in any order are your 3 priority bats. Shanuel from the top spot, 8 home runs, a 129 ISO, 93 WRC plus, been pretty weak. Doesn't strike out a ton, but just needs to do better. Needs to just find better results. I don't know what he's got to do. But the output has just been weak and really unreliable, especially with so many good opportunities from that leadoff spot. And then Willie Calhoun has been productive. 280, 319, 379, but 3 points below average for run creation, just 1 home run. So while he's been hitting for an okay average, getting on from time to time, and actually hitting the ball a little bit with a little bit of authority, he hasn't really seen much for it, which makes him an odd fit in the cleanup spot, but it's the best they can do. Limited lineup. Brewers bats, just because it's such a deep slate, I'll go Brewers bats on top and then Freddie Peralta, but I love both of those options, and then really no Tyler Anderson and only limited appeal in the Angels, if any. Last game up, Cole Ragans, top of the pitching board. Right there. Love that option against the A's, if you can afford it, and he's not all that expensive on DraftKings. Just another dominant, excellent pitcher. 3.14 ERA, 3.12 xFIP, pitching exactly like who he is. 14.1% swinging strike rate, 29.1% strikeout rate, 86 innings over 15 starts. Terrific. 7 innings the last time out. He gave up 2 home runs, but it only amounted to 3 earned runs on 6 hits. Still booked a quality start over 7 innings. Only struck out 4. That was against the low strikeout Dodgers, though. It's not a great DFS start for where you probably paid for him in that spot, but it's a serviceable start against the Dodgers. 6 innings against the Mariners of 1 run ball, 3 hits, 9 strikeouts. 6 innings against the Padres of 6 strikeout ball. That one broke a streak of quality starts. Oh, no, he had the 7-run game in there. That's right. He basically went bust twice. 7 runs over 6 1/3 against the Angels. Weird spot. And then a much more believable 7 runs to the Orioles. Every other start has been 3 runs or fewer. Strikeout high of 12 on the season. Potential dominance from Cole Ragans today against the Athletics. Going the other way, I did promise to look at this one real quick. 5,500 for Luis Medina. And I promised to look at it just because of this absurdly low run total. And the Royals being at just 4.01. Has that gone up? I didn't want to... I typed PINNAC, and I know what you're thinking, but that's not what came up. I typed PINNAC, just assuming that my link would autofill on Google like it usually does, and instead it returned the search results for pinnace. Again, not what you think I'm saying, but pinnace, as in the small ship. As a ship's boat, the pinnace is a light boat propelled by oars or sails carried aboard merchant and war vessels in the age of sail to serve as a tender. The pinnace was usually rowed out, but could be rigged with a sail for use in favorable winds. Definition: a small boat with sails or oars forming part of the equipment of a warship or a large vessel. If I had that "the more you know" jingle. This game is still at a 7-run total. It's leaning a little bit more this way now. Royals pick up 2/100ths of a run on that change. So Medina, this year 14.5% strikeouts and 11.6% walks with a 5.87 ERA and a 5.73 xFIP over his 15 1/3 and 3 starts in the show. Last year, over 109 2/3 and 17 starts, a more fair sample, did strike out 21.4%, which makes him a little bit more interesting, but had a 5.42 ERA with a 4.78 xFIP and an 11.5% walk rate with a 1.50 whip. A lot of that is unsustainable quality. Terrible CSW considering a 10.7% swinging strike rate. He's got decent stuff, slightly above average ratings by Stuff Plus. He's got the ability to induce swinging strikes, but he's wildly unreliable, and he's facing a pretty low strikeout Royals lineup that is good at generating contact, that has both power and speed in their lineup. It's a major close your eyes and hope for the best dart throw, if anything, at 55 on DK. I don't think he's really all that playable at 63 on FanDuel. And with so many good value options going up the board, you should probably just pay for one of those. I can't imagine Medina's going to be at all popular. Last time out, 5 innings, 3 strikeouts, 4 earned runs on 8 hits to the Twins. Start before that, 6 earned runs on 5 hits over 4 2/3 to Toronto. Struck out 1 and walked 5. Good start to begin the year at Atlanta, June 2nd. 5 2/3, no earned runs, 1 unearned run, 2 hits, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks. That's what you're hunting for. But again, low strikeout Royal squad on the other side that I kind of would just rather take Royals bat than take my shots against Luis Medina, honestly. Particularly if they're going to be that low. If they're going to be low owned because of that low total. Like, this is obvious. Even that is kind of obvious as a value play. This, I think, is obvious, but I'm probably going to use it again. I really like this Brewers club, and I like the way they click together with other teams, and I like that spot for them. Like I said, I think these guys are definitely in play for offense. But these guys might slip by at that low. Again, not to fly in the face of Vegas by any means. I don't want to sit here saying that it's wrong. But it might just be one of those spots where it just maths out a little bit weird for the implied total, and the Royals should maybe be getting a little bit like a half a run extra, which would put them right in line with the Brewers and, the Rockies on the home side of Coors Field and above all these teams. So the Royals could be really sneaky in this spot at the end of the night. A Brewers-Royals combo is kind of interesting. Brewers-Royals with Hunter Brown, anyone? Kind of like it. If you're taking, let's say, A's bats against Cole Ragans, it's probably not a good idea. You certainly want to include their righty power, guys like Brent Rooker, who is in the lineup. We have the official lineup. Max Schumann lead off, so a little bit of a change up. I know I'm taking my time here with this last game, but just at 6 o'clock, we'll get everything updated at the site. It'll be quick. It's only 8 games. Updates really quick. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Thank you guys all for watching and hanging out here and tolerating all the patience and the slowness and the nonsense and everything. I appreciate you. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle and like and retweet shit when you see it pop up. It helps spread the word a little bit for us. So Max Schumann from the top of the lineup now, 2,900, 2,400, 3 home runs, 4 stolen bases, only moderate output, over 173 plate appearances. I'm going to say Max is probably a little bit overmatched here against Cole Ragans. 27.2% strikeout rate, not ideal in the leadoff spot. JJ Bleday, 3,900, 2,700. Lefty bat facing a lefty. 10 home runs on the season for JJ. Let's see what his lefty-lefty production looks like. Just real quick. Three of those home runs have come against lefties in 56 plate appearances. Actually has a 288 ISO against same-handed pitching over that stretch. Damn. 113 WRC plus compared to a 141 against opposite hand. Where he comes down significantly is in the smaller sample against same-handed, 212, 255, 500 versus 273, 362, 472. A much better hitter against righties. For his career, that's this year. Again, small sample across the board. For his career, so only 2 additional home runs beyond what he has hit this year. 5 total home runs against lefties. 175, 224, 338 versus 222, 335, 401. 112 WRC plus against opposite hand. 57 WRC plus career against same-handed pitching. So, despite a little bit of output same-handed this year, I think JJ is in a little bit of trouble against Cole Ragans as well. So our lineup starts here and really goes from here to here, maybe there and there. And then we're dealing with Daz Cameron, another lefty, and a young lefty at that, and then a struggling Zach Geloff. So you've got maybe a 4-man A's lineup, and that's stretching because we're including Tyler Nevin in it, and that's really only because he's cheap and just between those guys. Maybe as a 3-man, you go Andujar, Rooker, and Shea Langoliers, and just take their 3 obvious guys and hope for some home run upside and some correlation between them. But it's not ideal as an approach. And if anybody takes the A's, I think that's the approach they take. So you're just building common A's lineups anyway. Rooker has 13 home runs at 255 ISO. He's been good this year. Some of the peripheral numbers have cooled off around the triple slash, but the power output is really what we're looking for. So Rooker's always playable. Does have a 5.58, but Ragans has been roughly elite in limiting home runs this year. 1.71% home runs allowed. Not that he's avoided barrels necessarily, not that he's kept the ball to a particularly low launch angle. He's just good. I think he's got a very good chance to strike out Brent Rooker 3 times. Tyler Nevin, 3,100. Dead min on FanDuel makes him a little bit interesting. 4 home runs, 127 ISO over 144 plate appearances. 3,100 just playable on DraftKings. Shea Langoliers also inconsistent, but right-handed power upside against the lefty. Then we get to an underexperienced and never was kind of a player in Daz Cameron, an underexperienced lefty in Tyler Soderstrom, who in a lot of spots I do like. 2,500 with a lot of premium contact in his profile so far. 5 home runs and 102 plate appearances. A 205 ISO. He hasn't been bad so far this year, but do we really need to go with him from the bottom of the A's lineup against Cole Ragans? I don't think so. And then Geloff, if we were going to the A's in abundance, certainly in the mix, but given the struggles, given the matchup, given the spot in the lineup, not ideal. If I was rolling this lineup, I might have considered putting Zach Geloff up top of the lineup, maybe moving JJ Bleday down into that mix of power. Like if you had gone Geloff, Schumann, or like Geloff, what really would have been interesting would have been like Geloff, Rooker, Andujar, or vice versa. Probably Andujar, Rooker. And then maybe JJ. Just go righty, righty, righty. Who cares at the top? Like, might as well throw 3 righties at Cole Ragans. You're the A's. You're not worried about later in the game matchups. Maybe slot JJ in somewhere down here. Langoliers, Nevin. Soderstrom could hit 9th. Slightly weird configuration. I mean, not weird because Geloff's been down here for his struggles, but I don't think that's necessarily a good idea to relegate him to fewer plate appearances. Like, give him more opportunity to get going, I think, for a good player like that. So pop him back up here. Anyway, Ragans potentially dominant. No real need to play the A's. And then go into the Royals, as I was saying, looks like a really appealing spot. So I'm going to check out how they click together with the Brewers, who I really like, and maybe some other options on the slate. Easy to pay for Bobby Witt when you've got Hunter Brown on the mound to work with as a cheap pitching option to pair him with and use Royal stacks. Everybody else in the Royals lineup is also pretty cheap on both sites, so they're a very easy stack to build with. Let's see if we got the confirmed in the last few minutes. Alex Jackson scratched for the Rays. Updated Rays just inserts Ben Rortvedt in the 8 spot. I'll do that now so I don't forget. Taylor Walls moves to 9th. I guess I didn't need to. So still no Royals lineup, but presumably it's going to be something like this everyday version. Michael Garcia from the top spot, 4,800, 3,200. I won't say what I think about him leading off. You guys know, 82 WRC plus, but a very capable bat with some power, with some speed, multi-category contributor, fair price for DFS purposes. I like the option. Bobby Witt's a superstar, 65.41, happy to pay for it. And like I said, easy to get to even at a very high price today, given all the cheap pricing around him and around everything on this slate. One of the ideal ways to spend your money. Vinny Pasquantino, you guys know I love. 7 home runs, 180 ISO, 106 WRC plus. Moderate output, nothing wrong with the output so far, but I just know there's better things coming. I'm telling you. It's another, we're going to look back. This is one that a month from now, maybe longer because it hasn't come around yet and I've been saying it for a couple months. But at a certain point, I'm going to be patting myself on the back saying, I was telling you guys, Vinny Pasquantino, as good as he's been, there's more to come. 4,600 on DraftKings, 2,800 on FanDuel. I love the option. Sal Perez, 51-31. Excellent power bat at catcher, 11 home runs on the season, 187 ISO, creating runs 37% better than average. Having himself a nice little season and still relatively cheap for the output. Adam Frazier, if he's hitting 5th, just a cheap spot in the lineup. Lefty bat in there against a mediocre righty. We'll see who's in that spot. Nelson Velasquez, MJ Melendez, very, very inconsistent power bats. Both of them have 8 home runs. Velasquez floating just above the Mendoza line. Melendez now well below it. On any given slate, either one of those guys could hit you 2 home runs. They're both very cheap, but even the home run output hasn't been at all consistent from either of those guys. 172 and 181 ISOs. You can see reasonably good premium contact numbers. Both were better last year. But there is power upside there. There is good reason to go to whichever one is in the better lineup spot, whichever one is a better price fit. They're both outfielders, so the position doesn't matter. But either way, if when you're playing lefty righty, obviously comes into the equation a little bit. I guess I slightly prefer MJ. I always have. Still just a sucker for that bat, even though we're at 171, 236, 352 at this point. Note that I'm not trying to sell you MJ as hard as I was Vinny, because I'm a bigger believer that Vinny Pasquantino is an actually talented hitter, where MJ is just one of those guys who's like, ooh, something shiny. The shiny is this. Nick Lofton, Kyle Isbell, just kind of playable parts at the bottom of the lineup. No real reason to dive into them. If you need them, they're there. They're cheap. They don't strike out that much. They can put the ball in play. Lofton's been kind of interesting. He gets on base at a good clip so far this year, over 95 plate appearances. Is what it is. Cole Ragans. Then the really interesting, potentially under-owned Royals. If you want anything from the Athletics, go for it. I think that, oddly, the Luis Medina value dart on DK only at 55 probably has more appeal to me, as much as I don't like it at all. Probably has more appeal than taking the A's bats against Cole Ragans in this spot. Really don't like them today. And they're a team that I do typically say, like, there's a little bit of appeal here. Or at least, not typically maybe, but sometimes. This is not one of those times. All right, let's get us punched out of this thing. We've been talking for entirely too long about this slate. But it's a really interesting slate, I gotta say. I really like this one. The DK pricing just is fascinating. The pitching board is super, super deep. You can go any direction with construction. Right? Would you be making a mistake necessarily if you went, say, those two? Kevin Gausman, even against the Red Sox and Hunter Brown. I mean, maybe other places would say you are, maybe other people. I certainly wouldn't say that's a mistake. Give me two high-end pitchers, one facing the worst lineup in baseball, one multiple seasons of 30+% strikeouts, just scuffling along in spots this year, but has also dominated in spots this year. A lot of talent for an average of 7,600 apiece on DraftKings. Let me pair those guys and then go win it somewhere else with some bats, or go pay for some bats that'll help me win the slate. That said, these guys are also very cheap for their talents. Any one of those guys could have been priced above 10K today. So you get a little bit of discount there. There's a lot of depth right there at the top of the board. Everybody's believable in that top price range. Very, very realistic. I think they did the right thing keeping Taj Bradley cheaper than these guys, but I think they went a little extreme at 8,000 because he's got silly strikeout upside if he's got his stuff and it manages to avoid the home runs. It's just that home run output that gets concerning with Bradley. So that's a nice little discount to cook that into the equation here on Taj Bradley compared to these guys. So he's not really all that different an option from the top of the board, considering that that's cooked into the price. It's the same on FanDuel, but FanDuel goes to higher extremes with these guys. So it's just kind of a different fit, like, in terms of what it buys you. I guess it buys you not having to make as big a sacrifice with bats, if that makes sense. But you're still drawing to lower-end combinations than if you took a bigger discount pitcher. Raggins for 10,698, top of the board, easy to get to. Garrett Crochet, 10,592, just as good. Just a worse matchup for him. Facing Oakland, facing Tampa Bay, facing the Angels, and obviously the White Sox, all much better matchups than facing the Astros, even in this depleted form. But Garrett Crochet is more than good enough to find strikeouts and pitch 6-7 clean innings against the depleted version of the Astros. So still take the option, and if he's lower owned than those other guys, to our advantage. Joe Ryan, tremendous, tremendous option for the pricing against Tampa Bay and all those strikeouts. Peralta could be easily the top of the board against the Angels, and if you get a little bit of ownership running off of him for the perception of struggles, one of the things we talked about today, so much the better. Talked about them. Not enough pitches, probably to pay off the pricing. Certainly could. Don't blame me if Garrett Cole goes out and strikes out 10 hitters in just 5 innings. It's on the board. He is that good. It's less than likely, though, against the Orioles. Sean Manaea, and by the same token, on the other side of that game, Andrew Heaney. I don't love either pitcher. I won't begrudge you shares for cheap prices. Either one could easily pay off those prices. I just prefer the bats in that game. If I had to pick one over the other, I'm taking Manaea against Texas over Andrew Heaney against the Mets. But I would probably, by and large, leave them on the board across, say, 20 lineups. In 150, few shares of each with more weight to Manaea, I think, is the appropriate approach. Brian Bayo, perfectly playable against Toronto, just a low-end strikeout opponent. Bobby Miller, don't fully trust the opportunity at Coors Field. Anderson, I'm targeting with the Brewers bats. Kate Povich, I target with the Yankees bats. Luis Medina, I'm targeting with the Royals, but I get it because he's only 55 on the DraftKings slate. Although if you're making that argument, Povich at 58 with more strikeout appeal, maybe. You're dealing with the Yankees in Yankee Stadium if you do that against a lefty. Probably not great. But the judgeless Yankees. And then Ryan Feltner's facing the Dodgers in Coors Field. So obviously Ryan Feltner's going to win the slate. So you say things like that, or at least if you're savvy in media, you say things like that just as a throwaway line at the very end of a show. And then if it happens, you can just clip that and say, like, see, we're the only ones that called it. Ryan Feltner's going to win the slate. He said it. And then you take context out of the equation completely and you get away with it. That's how these politicians survive, I'm telling you guys. Context is important. I'm rambling today. Dustin Smith with a funny line in the chat. Some Lance McCullers and Luis Garcia references. Time to update the lineups. Yeah, I know, Dennis. Yeah, I get it. Top of the board, Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton. Pretty easy options from the Yankee game at the very top of the home run board here. Not too far behind Mr. Royce Lewis. Trevor Larnach also from the Twins. And then a little bit further down the board, just under the magic number, you also get Carlos Santana. You get Max Kepler, who's today's home run pick of the day. You get Byron Buxton at 9.19. You get Carlos Correa at 8.78. Point being, the Twins are showing quite a bit of power in that spot. So kind of compelling spot for the Twins there. Another one that's in consideration for me to pair with the Brewers. Pete Alonso, love that spot for a home run. I was strongly considering making Pete the home run pick of the day today. I didn't, but I do like that call. Definitely think Gunnar could get one against Garrett Cole. Gunnar Henderson could go out and hit a leadoff home run against Garrett Cole today. Wouldn't honestly shock me. Like, first, second pitch, put one into the right field seats just to, like, wake Garrett Cole up a little bit. That happens to Garrett Cole. He's that guy. And then he'll get pissed off and strike out 6 guys over the next 5 innings and then go take a seat and win the game. I do like those Twins. It's going to be difficult for me to decide between the Twins, the Royals, and the Brewers. But I like all 3 of those combinations today. Obviously, the Dodgers at Coors Field is silly. Couple of Dodgers showing major power upside. And just as we've talked about, right, you don't need to show home run upside. And it doesn't always directly reflect home run upside. It's always there at Coors. But Coors, you have the advantage of just the gigantic ballpark, feeding extra base hits, feeding upside for just run scoring hits of all types. So, again, a very chalky, interesting spot there. Tyler O'Neill hiding down here. Rafi Devers not far behind right there. Both on the board for power upside. But again, the fact that they're relegated down here speaks to the quality of Kevin Gausman. Adolis Garcia at the magic number. And, well, this is the FanDuel price. But absurdly low priced on DK. Keep in mind those guys. If you could, like, context search the show somehow. Or like, keyword search the show somehow. And just look for those cheap bats. Or just as we go through, jot them down. There's a lot of them on DK lately. It's been really interesting over there. Anyway, let me go get these lineups updated and get the site up to date. Everybody who doesn't watch the show is probably wondering where the hell that is at this point. So you guys rock. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe if you've never done that before. Check out acemind.io for sims and optimizers and all that good stuff. Jump into the Discord if you're not in there already. A lot of good stuff going on in the Discord. Lineup chat running up to lock and all that good stuff. A lot of fun in there. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll be back at it tomorrow, gang. See ya.